Okay. Approximate work. So I'll go with the number of 14 feet above the surface of the lawn.
On the Safeway side.
Yeah.
About 10.
And then if they're accepting of that, I think they're definitely working with it. So I think look to the neighborhood is okay with that too, because still the guys are concerned enjoying the noise and screens the visibility of the truck, and that really is harder.
Alrighty, here we go. See at the other end. Okay. Okay, so at this point we're going. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the regular City Council meeting on Tuesday, January 24th, 2012. Let the record show that all council members are present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We had a closed session before the council meeting started this evening, and we have no reportable action from that. The next part of our agenda is public comments on items that are not on the agenda. What this means is that members of the audience can bring to our attention any item that's not on the agenda. Please complete a request to speak card. They look like this. They're out in the foyer. And submit it to our Deputy City Clerk here, John Maginot. Speakers are generally given 2 to 3 minutes, 2 if it's more than 10 speakers. At my discretion as mayor, and please be advised that by law, the City Council is unable to discuss or take any action on issues that are presented during the public comment period according to state law, also known as the Brown Act. Items must first be noticed on the agenda before any discussion or action. So I have one request to speak. Are there any other people who would like to speak under public comments about something that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, I will call our only speaker, Gary Hedden. Please come up to the podium and state your name and address and talk to us for 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Gary Hedden, Los Altos resident. The opportunity came up for Greentown to support the city in the 60th anniversary activities that are taking place this year. And what we would like to do and have offered to do is lead a bike ride and showcase the history of some of the commercial and residential buildings in our city. I'm interested. I love bike riding. I'm an avid bike rider, and I'm interested in history. And this was a great opportunity for me to learn about our history as well. So this is I'm really excited about this. It was presented to the Planning Commission. They agreed to accept it. It goes into their plug-and-play model, which they're keen for. What that means is we do all the work, and it doesn't cost them anything. So what's not to like? So the date has been picked. It's September 29th, and we will keep you posted as events as the planning takes place. I'm working with the History Museum personnel there, and I think we'll come up with a nice ride. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. And I'd just like to add that that's part of the 60th anniversary of incorporation celebrations. The planning committee for that 60th is who you're working with on that, right? Okay, good. Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. These items will be considered by one motion unless any member of the council or any member of the public wishes to remove an item for discussion. Any item that is removed from the consent calendar for discussion will be handled as my discretion as mayor. Generally, we put them at the end of the meeting. So is there any council or any of you wishing to remove items 1 through 8? Seeing none, is any member of the public interested in discussing items 1 through 8? Going once, going twice. Therefore, none.
Move to approve.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Fishbaugh and seconded by Councilmember Cassis to move the consent calendar. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And so that means that for those of you who aren't as familiar with our process, that we have approved in that one motion the items 1 through 8. So we will now move to item number 9, which is a public hearing on our sign ordinance amendments. And with that, is there a staff report?
I'm just going to be here to answer some questions. As you can tell, the sign ordinance was adopted. We were to have a 6-month review, and that was scheduled for May, but it was delayed, and then we ended up having study sessions. We've had community outreach, and at the September 27th council meeting, the council reviewed the sign ordinance and made some suggested changes. And at that time, you wanted the Planning Commission to review the changes, one, because some of the sign ordinance amendments are contained in the zoning code, so by law, the Planning Commission needed to review those. And so that review was scheduled for November 17th, and they reviewed it and made some recommended changes. The ordinance that you have in front of you doesn't reflect those changes. I just wanted to give you that information and to see if you wanted to accept some of those changes or not. Tonight, we're just introducing this ordinance if you want to go forward with it, so we can make those changes, introduce it as modified, and then bring it back for adoption. It's just when you try to change it at the time of adoption that you need to reintroduce. So I can go through some of the changes. I think the most significant one was for digital signs. The Planning Commission wanted some further review or maybe some further information about the intensity of digital signs, and could we regulate that? Could we regulate the lumens? I did not want to go and do that research until I got clear direction from the council. And so if you do want more research, and there are some time, place, and manner restrictions that you can do on the intensity, the hours the digital signs would run, I could come back with that information, but we wouldn't be able to approve the digital sign amendment tonight. We would have to continue that. The other changes were just with the ribbons and the time period for the ribbons, and I think there's been some discussion, and they wanted to change it to displayed no more than 2 weeks. The council's direction was they should be removed within 2 weeks, so it's still looking like you want a 2-week period. When the sign ordinance amendments first came out, I tried to tie it to a certain event, but then there was concern about we're trying to stay out of message restrictions. So we took the ribbons from being connected to any event, so we just wouldn't have any speech issues. So I can answer any more questions. The other change the Planning Commission wanted was to change nonprofit to not-for-profits for the A-frame signs. That's really not. It doesn't really make a difference if they're nonprofits are not-for-profit. I was looking at that today. And then you wanted the Planning Commission to review the hours that they could that these nonprofits could have their A-frame signs, and they wanted it during the hours of the event, the days and hours of the event only, not like the real estate signs. But there has been a question, and it came up at the last council meeting when you reviewed these. If you allow this nonprofit exception to the A-frame signs, it really will carve out the exception that could swallow the rule with message substitution that's provided for to make signs comply with First Amendment. So again, that's just a council decision tonight if you really want to go forward with these nonprofit A-frame signs for their fundraising events. So that's the end of my report.
I have a questions, Council?
Yeah, so just to clarify, in the ordinance before us, the hours included align with the real estate hours at this point?
Yes, those are the same as real estate. And you specifically sent the A-frame signs to the Planning Commission for them to review the hours, and so that's it.
Okay. Mr. Packard, you had a question?
I'm Bruce.
Mayor Pro Tem Fishbaugh?
So I'd like to understand if we were to accept the changes to the A-frame sign hours to be during the time of the event, and if we were interested in potentially pursuing a lumens requirement for digital signage, what would the next steps be for the sign ordinance?
If you're changing the lumens on the digital, that would not be able to be introduced tonight because I don't have those. And I believe that there's several alternatives, and before you made a big change to the digital sign, I would want to give you the alternatives that you could have. If you want to change the nonprofit A-frames, and you need to decide if you want to call them nonprofits or not-for-profits, I suggest just staying with nonprofits. And then the display time, if you want to modify it to be only during the day and the hours of the event, you can give that direction tonight, and the ordinance would be introduced with that change.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to, Julie, if I can clarify the one term that you were making distinction on, not-for-profit versus nonprofit. I did a quick search, and not-for-profit, the membership roster actually can profit from the organization itself, while it may be a not-for-profit business. A nonprofit could actually have a paid staff in support. So I want to make sure that we're using the right. If your preference was originally nonprofit, I would go with that.
The nonprofit was council's direction, and when I was looking at it today, I think the distinction where I was saying that the distinction blurs is that the surplus monies have to be used for for expansion or maintaining or promoting the organization. So I was looking at that, and it seems like that they were very similar in that regard. So, but council came up with nonprofits because I think that this whole issue came up because of the church and their bazaar and their fundraisers, and they wanted to continue to have their A-frames for their holiday bazaar and something else. So we didn't want to limit it just to churches, so I think you decided maybe just nonprofits.
Nonprofit is, I would advocate better use than not-for-profit, only because the roster can benefit in a not-for-profit organization. That's the only thing.
Any other comments or questions for staff?
The comment that I have is just regarding intensity of digital displays. I think that there may be value in pursuing intensity of digital displays. I know that when I drive down El Camino in the evening time, there's one business, I believe, in Mountain View. I think it's a rug cleaning store that has a very intense digital display in their window. And I see that as something where we wanted a 6-month review to be able to come back and make positive changes to the ordinance. And if the Planning Commission has identified that the lumens is something that we might want to address, I would be interested in seeing Jolie's alternatives to that section. So I think the digital displays is definitely the trickiest section out of this. And nonprofit, I'd be fine with nonprofit. And also with changing the hours to match the event time.
We do need to have a public hearing, so if there's any more questions for staff, then we'll move into comments after the public hearing. Seeing none? No more questions? Okay. So I'm going to open the public hearing on the signed ordinance amendments. I have no speakers. Would any of you wish to speak? If you do, I would like a sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw item 10, but it's actually item 9. You would wish to speak. So if you'd come forward. Any other speakers, please fill out a card on this item. Okay. And seeing none, so it will be, Julie will be our only speaker in 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Julie Rose, and I'm representing the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce. Would like to take this opportunity to thank the staff for working with the Chamber and LAVA over the past few months to come up with the changes. We're very pleased. A couple of concerns I had after the Planning Commission meeting this evening were, the ribbons on the trees. We really believe that 2 weeks total. The way it now reads, it say they should be removed within 2 weeks, means they could be up for months. They just had to be removed within 2 weeks of the event. And I think we feel, and I was consulting with Nancy, that 2 weeks total. Yeah, that could be 2 weeks before the event and down the day of the event, or it could be the day before the event and down 13 days later, but 2 weeks total.
I think the Planning Commission, their suggested language, they shall be displayed for no more than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The council had, they shall be removed within 2 weeks, so it's...
And we're recommending that 2 weeks total.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they could be up for months. It doesn't say when they go up, it say they have to, I'm not sure how that reads. It doesn't mean within 2 weeks of the event or whatever, so that should be clear. The other thing, speaking for the nonprofit organizations that are members of our organizations, to have their A-frame signs displayed during the same time that the real estate signs just really doesn't make sense if they're having an event on a Wednesday, to put the signs up on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So we really need some kind of wording in there if they're going to be allowed, that they be allowed at least when the event is happening, and not. And that's it. Thank you.
I do have a question for you. Mm-hmm. So I believe the Chamber was one of the organizations in favor of us modifying the digital sign ordinance. And before us, we have a modification that doesn't address the potential lumens restriction. What's the urgency you see? If there's a majority of council that wants to further examine this lumens, is there some urgency for passing what we have tonight and coming back to the lumens, or can we wait and do it all as one thing?
You could probably wait. We didn't even discuss lumens in the series of meetings that we had that came out of the Planning Commission. They're concerned about
and just to clarify on the ribbons, there's no reference to an event, so it is 2 weeks total time up to down.
Then if that's the way it's interpreted, that it's 2 weeks total and not 2 weeks from the date of the event, just as long as they're not allowed to be up for months. That was a concern.
Any other questions?
So for before we modify time and place for the A-frame signs, how many nonprofits are we talking about? And specifically, how many events would this impede on it not being on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
I really don't know that for sure.
Okay.
I do know that the nonprofits we heard were several of the churches with their rummage sale, the Foothill Congregational and the Methodist Church. And I don't think their events don't always fall on these exactly same times.
Right. Okay.
So I'm not sure. I don't really have a list of how they are.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, any other comments? I'm going to close the public hearing on this item. And now we move into council discussion. Who would like to begin?
I am in favor of keeping the hours consistent with the real estate, and that's for two reasons. One, with the real estate, we already have message substitution, so this doesn't actually carve out a larger time frame where we have message substitution. Second, I think it's just clearer. The time is stated. There's no confusion as to, was the event happening? Was it not happening? Did it start? I honestly don't think we're going to have a big problem with people being in violation of this. If we go ahead and keep it consistent, we can address issues that do arise with signs that are becoming visual clutter. I'm not aware of any complaints we've had relative to these types of signs. This is a reactive. We react to complaints rather than proactive enforcement. If we find that somehow this is creating a huge burden enforcement issue or problem, I think we could revisit the hours at that time. But my concern with the hours is we're just carving out greater and greater message substitution issues. So that's why I'd rather keep it consistent with what we have. I'm open to considering lumens if people feel like that's necessary, but I'm willing to support what we have before us as well.
So I share Megan's thoughts, and as she was making them, I was looking at Jolie's affirmative nod about message substitution, and I believe that what we have is a well thought out document, and to make iteration changes when you could put up a sign and then subsequently change the message would lose control and oversight. And I don't want to have the police chasing things down and determining which hours are or are not. And so I think that if necessary, the nonprofits who may have alternate days, there are other ways to get the messages out, or consider having them on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Okay. Other comments? Councilmember Packard or Mayor Pro Tem Fishbaugh? No? All right, my comments are that I think it's important that we move forward on the digital signs as written. I think we can address the lumens issue at a future point if we need to, but I do think we need to get that into law. Secondly, I do like the language of the Planning Commission better. I think it's clearer that it's a 2-week period that the ribbons can go up. It can be up. And third, I'm fine with the nonprofit A-frame signs as written. I do trust that the definition of a nonprofit is clear. I'm hoping that it is some official definition like 501c3 or equivalents of those rather than just calling oneself a nonprofit. So with that, would someone like to make a motion? Well, I could make the motion if you'd like. It's not my job as mayor to make the motion, but so I move that we introduce and waive further reading of ordinance number 212-377, amending chapters 9.26 and 14.68 of the Los Altos Municipal Code as related to signs, with the one change that the ribbons on city trees would be per the Planning Commission recommendation on language, that ribbons can only be up for 2 weeks total.
Second.
This has been moved and seconded. Any further council discussion?
Yeah, I think that most of the nonprofit events are on the weekends. I don't think I think the rummage sales, I believe, are on the weekends. So I think that this will encapsulate most of the events that were of question. So I'm comfortable with this.
Any other comments? Thank you. Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Our next agenda item, number 10. Sorry.
I didn't hear that we gave staff direction to follow up on lumens, so we're not doing that.
That was not in my motion.
Okay, that's I wanted
my view is that
I'm fine with that. I just wanted
later if we need to. Okay. So are we clear? Staff's clear on what we just did? Okay. So our next item, we move now into discussion items. We're on item number 10, which is the new Safeway grocery store development. Just so that everyone here understands the process, we will begin with a staff report and council questions to staff. Then the applicant will have 10 minutes to make a presentation and respond to questions. Then I will take public comments, and anyone who wishes to speak on this item again needs to turn in one of these cards before the first public speaker begins. And then after public comments, the applicant will have 5 more minutes at the end to answer any questions that are raised or to do anything that they would like to do. So 10 at the beginning, 5 at the end, and then we will turn it over to council discussion. So that's what we're going to do here. And with that, I would like to request a staff report.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. The item before you is a new 45,265 square foot grocery store with 154 parking spaces. This approval includes the adoption of a mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact and approval of a design review application for a new commercial structure and a use permit to operate a grocery store that is over 7,000 square feet. You do have a resolution as part of your staff report. It contains the project findings, conditions of approval, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program as outlined in the mitigated negative declaration. This project also includes a shared parking agreement, the terms of which were reviewed and approved in draft by Council on October 25th, 2011. The draft terms are included as Exhibit B in the resolution. And as noted in the staff report, there are some proposed changes to the terms of the parking agreement. Of those elements, 129 of the 154 spaces will be designated for public parking. And so in this case, just to highlight this one particular example, during the downtown's peak parking demand period, which is roughly 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., there will be an average of 45 stalls of this project available for public use, and this is according to the project traffic engineer, Farron Piers. There was also several comments and Planning Commission direction regarding public parking signage and making sure that it's adequate and amply visible. So as was presented to you on the dais this evening, there is a revised condition number 11, which attempts to address this, and it can be further tweaked if necessary. And really the goal of it is to provide an overhead sign reading public parking with a blue and white blade sign with the letter P, which is your standard indication of public parking, at each of the entry points to the parking lot, and we can refine that if necessary. And I believe Safeway does have an exhibit which illustrates this revision as well. With regard to the Foothill Expressway edge, I know there's been some discussion regarding the exact details of it, and Safeway did present a revised plan which showed their Foothill Expressway edge being entirely covered with vertical green screening. I think it's important to address the University Avenue neighbors' concerns with regard to light, noise, and views without creating what could look like a freeway sound wall. This is a very prominent commercial downtown edge, and it's important to include design elements that express the commercial nature of the structure, along with appropriate view corridors, street trees, and well-placed and integrated vertical screening. So in response to Safeway's proposal, the amount of vertical green screening along this elevation, staff would recommend not covering the entire elevation and definitely not removing any of the proposed street trees in order to add more vertical green screening, and perhaps finding a balance of adding more without compromising the street trees, which would be a very important element to providing depth to this elevation. Also, there was a request from the owner of the building at 110 First Street to reduce the height of the wall along the northern elevation. This is primarily an open green screen, and staff is supportive of that, as this was added primarily to benefit that property. So there shouldn't be any problem with reducing it if that owner is desiring of that element. Also, with regard to the 19-foot 6-inch wall that is proposed along the northern part of the property adjacent to Foothill Expressway, this is there to screen the loading bay and the northern parking lot. I did have a chance to speak with Safeway's acoustical engineer, and their comment was this wall could be reduced to as low as 14 feet from the surface of the parking lot without potentially creating any new noise impacts. And so staff is supportive of reducing this height, as there have been comments made about the vertical nature of it, and well, the main goal is to provide for sound buffering and visual screening. This can be accomplished with a wall that is lower than 19 feet 6 inches. So staff would recommend going with the lower wall height of 14 feet from the surface of the parking lot rather than the proposed 19 feet 6-inch wall. So with that, I am available to answer any additional questions and am conveying the recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission.
Okay, questions from council? Sure. Mr. Cassis?
Thank you. Question and the comment about potentially lowering the height wall. Given the community meetings that we've had for the design that was being proposed, did we circle back to any of the adjoining University Avenue neighbors to let them know that we would be lowering that height, even though acoustical engineer may say that it may be adequately reduced, and you're supportive of that? My concern is that we said one thing to the neighbors, and I want to make sure that we hold true to the statements and the plans that we had shown them, because we set an expectation with them, and to change that tonight I think would be a misstep.
I don't know I know there have been multiple discussions with the neighbors in the days leading up to this meeting. I don't know the extent to which this was discussed with them.
Any, Mr. Packard, questions for
staff? Yes, before the public hearing, I thought I ought to probably do a little introduction to the draft downtown sharing parking agreement. Jolie, would now be the right time?
Would you like to wait till after the applicant presents, or?
When should I go over this?
I would wait. I'd wait till all staff comments, and then I'd do it after the applicant introduces their project. I think that would give a better background for everything.
So, any other questions for staff, Mr. Fishbaugh?
I had a question on condition 13, the provided and prepare landscape and irrigation plan that includes Foothill Expressway shoulder and the public right of way. Now, is this landscape and irrigation plan? Does this also include a plan for vegetation management? Should any of the vegetation die out? Is there any condition that covers a amount of time before the vegetation is replanted, or Do we need to include that as a condition in this application?
In this particular case, the shoulder is entirely within the public right-of-way, and so the way it would work is Safeway would install the irrigation and the landscaping, but the city would take over maintenance as part of our maintenance of the entire Foothill Expressway corridor.
And is that the same for any of the vertical green screening that would be planted on the side of the building?
That would be different since it's physically on the building. So if appropriate, we could add a specification in that Safeway maintain that. There is another condition which identifies that they maintain the vertical green screens.
That's number 3.
I believe. So we could expand on 3 to include also the vertical green screening along Foothill Expressway as well.
I believe Condition 3 already says that the applicant is responsible for maintaining the green walls along First Street, so.
But is that also, the Foothill Expressway side was
Yeah.
the other thing that I just wanted to make sure is covered.
Well,
That could easily be modified to include Foothill.
Any other questions for staff before we move into the applicant? Okay. So Safeway representatives, you have a total of 10 minutes. Okay.
Has it already started? Hi, I'm Deb Carbo, Director of Development for Property Development Centers, a Safeway company. And there's no question why we're here tonight. We've been at this for a while, and we're delighted to be here and hopefully can end up with a new store in downtown Los Altos. We think a new store would be good for Safeway and for Los Altos. I'm going to talk briefly about the economic and aesthetic benefits of the project, and I'm going to rattle through this pretty quickly because it's been a long time and I've got a lot of material. So first, let's start with the heart of retail, sales. Safeway knows retail. They've been in the grocery business for 97 years. We have just under 1,700 stores, and we believe that we're successful because we understand the grocery shoppers, maybe a little better than our competitors do. Our business strategy is very simple. Get the groceries into the cart and the cart and the bags into the car. We want to provide an attractive place to shop with a wide selection of high-quality products at attractive, everyday, low prices. In Los Altos, we want to be both an anchor store attracting shoppers to downtown and a supporting store serving the customers who are attracted downtown by the adjacent retailers. We'll be the anchor tenant for the Mountain View store, and we'd also like to anchor this area with a store in downtown. With the new store, we expect our shoppers will stay a little bit longer and basically spend more. So we call that a bigger basket. And it's because we have an expanded selection and a much improved shopping environment. That's what the lifestyle store is all about. It's really not, it's a Safeway store, and it's nice, fixtures and that sort of thing. The greater sales and more shoppers for Safeway mean more people who shop downtown, and that enhances the overall retail attraction of downtown Los Altos, and that results in greater business activity and sales for all the retailers in the area. So let's talk about what we've planned for Los Altos. This is a very unique store, different than anything that we've built so far. After 4 years and 5 complete redesigns, we're ready to move forward. We want to build this. We've solved for the loading dock, getting it off of First Street, and on the site we've provided for an expanded city easement, accessing the adjacent city property. We've got a very nice aesthetic interface with downtown. We've created a wonderful landscape buffer along Foothill that I'll show you more about in a minute. And then, of course, solved for parking with the help of the city manager and assistant city manager, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Actually, let me have the architect just walk you through a quick fly-through of the movie, and then I'll finish the presentation.
Good evening. I'm Ken Lowney, Lowney Architecture. This movie is about 3 minutes and 30 seconds long, and we have more to say than that. So I'm just really going to go over the design evolution of the project, how we have listened to the neighbors and city architectural site and planning. This is a podium store, which means that the store is on the second level and the parking is on the ground level, and the vestibules connect the second level to the street level. So in this instance, we're really concerned with solving the problem of how you get a contemporary large format retailer and weave it into a sort of a fine-grained retail district such as First Street in Los Altos.
Apologies, Ken, but the movie's lost, so we'll just go back into the presentation.
Okay. No problem.
Everybody's seen it many times.
It might have been trying to read off of the remote disk. Yeah.
It was working earlier. So basically, we've got the existing store of 22,000 square feet with parking on both sides. That's today. This is what we're proposing. It's all the parking is at grade, and the store sits above the parking. So this is the store above the parking. Unlike other centers where you might have parking around back that helps you calculate your pro rata requirement or your parking requirement, all of the parking here is excellent parking. It's for the most part covered. There's nothing that's out back. This is all really nice, convenient parking. We have 154 stalls. There are 3 curb cuts on First Street. We have 90-degree parking to improve circulation. You can get into every space in the lot through any of the 3 curb cuts and entrances. We've provided for the expanded easement that I mentioned, and we have good bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, and loading, again, is now on site. This is the elevation that shows the green screen that we've worked with the neighbors on. So this is different than what you have in your package. And when the suggestion was raised, the architect was concerned about potato vine across the entire rear of the property. So what we did was add trumpet vine and Cecil Bruner, which is a climbing rose. And so you have 3 different colors on the building. As well, we've got trees, 2 deciduous species and 2 evergreen. We've got grasses, shrubs, and then ground cover. So we've done a really nice job at landscaping this area to benefit the neighbors. So we would ask that you approve this elevation tonight. That's the foothill green screen. As well, we added public parking signage. That was brought up after we made the submittal. So basically, where we show where we show parking, we just added public in front of it. So it's very tastefully done. You see it on both areas. As well, you can see the P Blade sign. There's one on First Street and one here. We don't have an elevation that addresses the 14-foot wall yet because this literally came about today. But we would ask that you would consider that as well in light of the fact that the acoustical engineer confirmed that the sound would still be mitigated. So now let's talk about parking. We spent a long time on the parking issue. Several years ago, we couldn't proceed because we couldn't meet the 5 per 1,000 parking ratio. And the city manager suggested, after seeing our initial parking study, that we may be able to benefit from a shared parking because the city's peak demand is different than ours. So just real quickly on parking. Parking needs differ depending upon the market area of the store. Suburban locations, of course, need more parking, 5 per 1,000 generally. Urban and downtown stores, generally we have a smaller store and the parking is 2.5 to 3.5 per 1,000. I'm going to quickly go through these slides. This is downtown Burlingame that we just built. It's about 76,000 square feet total and 2.6 stalls per 1,000. This is downtown Los Gatos. Again, 3.4 0.4 stalls per thousand. I have a slide here in a minute that shows you all of these. Albany is a planned location, and again, it's planned at 2.5 per thousand, and then College in Claremont is planned at 3.1 per thousand. 2 of those are already built, 2 are on the books. These are all downtown stores. This just gives you an idea of where the parking ratios fit with what we're proposing in Los Altos. So again, we think that this is a great opportunity to share parking. We did a study, and based on that study, we determined what we need. And the need was 138 stalls, and I've got the traffic engineer that can answer any questions for you on that. The peak demand exceeds supply 170 hours a year. So out of 6,600 hours, we exceed supply 3% of the time. Generally, from 4 to 6 p.m. The city's peak is 11 to 3, Monday through Friday. So this gives you an idea of where we can benefit from shared parking. So we've been negotiating the terms of a parking agreement, and the agreement is based on the term sheet that was approved or that was brought to City Council in October of this year. It's 129 stalls for 90-minute parking available 24/7. Employee parking is on-site. The employees are not allowed to park in the White Dot program or long-term parking downtown. We would make a $500,000 contribution toward downtown parking. There's 2 separate provisions for opting out. We can discuss that further. It's $1 million if the city allows a reduction in the downtown parking ratio, 2.8 in year 1 to 5 at Safeway's discretion, and then $1.5 million in year 6 if Safeway just decides to opt out because it's not working for us. Safeway, I've got just 1 more minute. Safeway maintains and monitors at no cost to the city. We pay the real estate taxes, and initially we talked about in October Safeway and the city both insuring, but Safeway's now agreed to handle the insurance. So the thing I wanted to mention real quickly is that we'll enter into a transportation demand plan that allows for our employees to be parking off-site during those peak days, which are 5 holidays a year. This is a part of the parking agreement, and the strategies would include incentives for employees for alternate transportation, off-site parking out of the downtown area, and then valet for employee parking. So that was a brief summary of a detailed project. We think a new store would be good for you and Safeway. And please vote yes tonight on the project and the parking agreement, and we'll bring a new store to Los Altos. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have questions for the applicant, Mr. Cassis?
I have the same question I asked staff about the reduction of the height of the wall. My concern is ensuring that we're managing the expectation with those that may be impacted by it based on the number of community meetings we've had, both with the residents as well as neighbors. And so has the 19-foot wall basically been shown as a buffer to those neighbors that would have a direct line of sight?
Yes.
Okay. Yet you're in favor of reducing the height based on the acoustical engineer?
Yes, and actually I'd like to clarify. Safeway is pleased to go either way. We can reduce the height. I think part of the concern were headlights and noise, and so after talking further to the acoustical engineer, he feels that noise can be addressed. Headlights are not an issue because it is such a high wall, so it may be just a function of another meeting with the neighbors, with the sound engineer, this acoustical engineer, to help educate them about this, but it is something that we can actually go either way.
So the reason I'm asking the question is that where it may be appropriate sound-wise, my concern is most semis have lights on top, and I just would be concerned with the visual blight that may occur with reduced wall height to those neighbors that have line of sight. And so I just want to make sure that that's addressed, however the council chooses to ultimately address it. But I just want to make sure that we're being honest with our residents.
Oh, I agree, 100%. We've spent a lot of time working with the residents, and we want them to be happy.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Carville. And I believe, Mr. Packard, you had some comments?
Yes. Let me put this down. As you know, it's been 15 years that Safeway's been considering this, and this is the first application they've ever made. So it's not as though they've been approaching the city with applications year after year. This is the first. And I know that sometimes the devil's in the detail, and having the parking agreement as close to completion as possible is important because, as I say, the devil's in the details sometimes. So with the assistance of our city attorney and Doug and James, I went into high gear working with Safeway and Safeway's attorneys. They've been very accommodating. We have, you have before you a draft downtown sharing parking agreement. I wish we have had it to you a week ago, but I was up late last night working on it, and then it got to the city attorney and their attorneys, and it's gone. We spent most of today working on this, and there's a couple small items that are incorrect, and I'll take a moment and point those out. But I'd like to go over the general terms of it. Maybe I ought to do that first. The general terms are that Safeway is 72, if they were self-contained and did not provide any benefit to the city, they are 72 parking stalls short of what the city codes require. Now, their studies indicate that they will actually have excess parking as a reality, except for a few days a year. So they are adjacent to Parking Plaza 7. So what they have done is they have agreed to make their excess parking available to the city for public parking in exchange for the fact that they don't have the 72 parking stalls. Now, the arrangement we've made is for the first 5 years, if they want out of this arrangement of us being able to use their parking, except 25 that they're going to put up to the front for their shoppers, in exchange for us being able to use theirs and them being able to use ours, if they want out of that agreement for the first 5 years, they've got to pay $40,000 per stall for the right to elect out. That is the equivalent of what the Packard Foundation paid for their stalls, $40,000 per stall. And now they are paying $500,000 up front, so they get a credit for that $500,000. But otherwise, it's $40,000 a stall. After the 5 years, we've received the benefit of having that excess parking. The purchase price drops, if they want out, to $1.5 million, with, of course, the credit for the $500,000. So it drops to $1.5 million. And now, there's some other nuances that we've looked at. But that's the general terms of the agreement. And I'm not going to advocate. I just want to present the facts. Now, in terms of a couple minor corrections, in paragraph 1.26, the very top of page 5, if there is a person who repeatedly, See, they've got 90 minutes. It's going to be available to the public for 90 minutes instead of the normal 3 hours. If there's some obvious employee downtown that is abusing this, then we've agreed that we will look at modifying or adopting some rules and regulations of what can be done. So, but the very top says, in such event, the parties shall work together to. And this says adopt appropriate measures. I think the intent was to consider the adoption of appropriate measures. So it was non-binding on the city, but we will look at that. The The next is paragraph 4.1 on page 7. It says that the employees of any business operated by Safeway parcel, in other words, the Safeway employees shall not be entitled to participate in the city's downtown parking permit program. There's a mistake. The "not" was supposed to be in there instead of "they're entitled to." And the paragraph 8.1. This is supposed to, and it's not quite worded right yet, but the page 9, the intent is this gets renewed every 10 years or some rule, technical rule against perpetuity. So it's continued every 10 years unless they elect out under the programs that I mentioned, the 2.8 million or the 1.5 million. And it's not quite worded correctly yet, but that's good. And then the last item is one that that we may not yet have agreement on. And I'll have to hear from Safeway later on. But paragraph 8.2, after you see in bold the termination fee period 2, it says, notwithstanding the foregoing, the termination fee period 1 or termination fee period 2 shall be by 500,000. That should be the termination period number 1 or should be deleted. And then it says that notwithstanding the foregoing, the termination fee period 2 shall be reduced. The word reduced is missing, and by 500,000 and so forth. And then it falls in line, like I said, that for that second period, if the parking, and the last council meeting there that we discussed this, there was a concern that the city ought to have a little bit of fudge factor in case the actual parking that we provide, the ratios are decreased. And we've got in there to where we've got a designated area that's around Safeway, and will determine the total parking, public and private, in that area, will determine the total square footage of buildings, non-residential buildings in that area, and come up with the ratio. That study hasn't been done, but it will yet be done. And then whatever ratio that is, this reduction of 500,000 in the second time period only kicks in if we go below 95% of whatever that ratio is. So it's not 10 stalls or 15 stalls. It would probably be around 15 or thereabouts, is our rough guess. But it would be based upon a ratio, and the ratio is 95% reduction. And that way, doing that study wouldn't hold up approving the agreement. So I'm open to any questions. Yes, Dave. Madam Mayor.
So in hearing the modifications or the one disagreement, if we get clarity on that, it doesn't appear to be a material change to what we have in front of us. And so help me understand, because I think we can move forward with alignment on any minor modifications, but do you have...
It's my impression this is an implementation of the term sheet that was approved before with minor, for instance, the insurance.
Right.
The term sheet said that both sides will insure.
Right.
And when we got down to it, we said, it's a lot easier if Safeway just insures. And they didn't extract any benefit in exchange for that. It's just that.
But my question to you is, it does not appear, unless I'm mistaken, and correct me if I am, that the changes you've mentioned are not necessarily material. Is that correct?
They're not material.
Okay, thank you.
Except maybe this one that we maybe don't see eye to eye on, and this came as a surprise. Safeway and their attorneys have been a delight to work with. But when we had our last discussion at 4, this wasn't in there, and then it was in here now. So it came as a little surprise. And so I think she had an understanding, I had an understanding, and maybe we can work that out.
Ms. Satterley, question?
Yeah, I just, so first I wanted to thank Councilmember Packard for working hard on addressing some of the concerns that were raised when the term sheet originally came before us. And it does sound as if they have been addressed. I would not be able to vote in favor or against a document that I have not read. I think this is a critical agreement for the city, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it was on the dais tonight. We came from closed session to this meeting. I have not read it, and I cannot vote on such a critical matter without having read it.
Yeah, in that light, I don't think it's critical for purposes of the negative deck. However, if the rest of the council felt that they can vote on it tonight, so be it. But if the majority felt that they didn't, we could bring this back to us either in a special session or in a regular session later on.
Other questions for Mr. Packard?
I had been under the impression that this was something we were going to deal with in the next regular meeting in February. Is that?
Well, it's just that I'd like to get Safeway moving along.
Right.
That's my only motive. And things like this can hold things up forever. And so I went into high gear. I wish I had got it done by last Wednesday so that Megan could have read it. I knew she would say that. I knew it for sure, and I told Safeway that Megan was going to say that. But I'd prefer not waiting that long, if that is the decision.
So
Quick, Mr. Cassis first, then Ms. Satterley. So you first.
Okay.
These are questions for Mr.
Right.
Packard.
Well, actually, it's more of a statement. I've worked with you here on the dais for 8 years. I'm confident in your legal acumen. You've gotten us through many challenging legal hurdles, and so I'm confident that you have consistently served the best interests of the city in that regard, and I have no concern on your ability to articulate a solid position for the city, and in partnership with Jolie and the other attorney. I think we have one sticking point that may or may not hold up this agreement, and I am anticipating the last commentary for the 5 minutes after the public discussion, how Safeway is going to respond to that. Generally, we don't negotiate in public, but if this is a one sticking point, it may sway moving forward or not, moving forward with the document. So.
Thank you for your compliment. And to amplify that briefly, apparently we've negotiated a hard enough deal. It did not go up just to the regional manager or the regional vice president or the regional president. It didn't even go up. It went beyond the president of the entire company. It went to the chairman of the board, who had to review this and approve it because it is unique. And apparently our negotiating team with Jolie, Doug, and James were pretty tough. So.
And Ms. Settle, you had a question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on what Mayor Pro Tem Fishpaw said. I'm happy to move forward on a special meeting to review this, and I agree with Councilmember Packard that adopting this or not adopting this tonight is not going to preclude us from making a decision on the design review, use permit, or the mitigated negative deck. So I'm very comfortable that we can move swiftly to adopting this and be prudent, and I know Councilmember Packard knows that this does not in any way mean as a slight to him. It has nothing to do with that, so I know you know that.
Okay. Any further comments before I open for public comment? Okay, seeing none. At this point, I will take public comments. If you wish to speak, please turn in a yellow card. Once our first speaker starts, our policy is not to take any additional cards. So if you wish to speak, now would be the time to fill out one of these cards and give them to John Maginot here so that we can begin the public comment period. Are there any other cards? Any more cards out there? We have more than 10. Our policy is to allow 3 minutes per person if it's less than 10 people, and 2 minutes if it's more than 10. So my preference would be that we would limit each of you to 2 minutes. So that's what the time will be. That's what our policy states. Any other yellow cards? Okay, one more. Is there one more coming? He's coming right back. Okay. You can give it to me. Who is it that's filling it out right there? Okay. Okay. So you can give that to us at the, as we start, but that's it. Okay? All right. Okay. So we'll begin with I think we have, let me count, 1, 2, 3. I don't think I need to open it as a public hearing, do I, Jolie? No, I don't think so. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
But Mayor, at the end, I would close the public comment period.
Just close it?
Yeah.
Well, I can open it.
So we
close
have
So
it final.
I will open the public comment period. And I think we have, 13 or so speakers. The first speaker will be David Bergman. If you come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We have a seat here between the two folks in the front row called reserved for next speaker. I will usually call 2 names, and if the second speaker would come up and sit in that chair, it will just make this whole process go more quickly. So first speaker, David Bergman, followed by Harry Price. Okay, and Harry, if you'd come up and take the seat. 2 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I'm David Bergman. I'm chairman of the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce. I'm a business owner, a real estate broker on First Street in Los Altos, member of LAVA, and I just live off Magdalena. First time I stepped foot in Safeway was in 1972, a long time ago, and it's really not any different today than it was then. So it's time to make a change. At the Government Affairs meeting for the Chamber, we were presented with the parking, with the store plans, and we voted unanimously to support the Safeway project. At the most recent Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors meeting, a motion was made, and I'll read it. The Board of Directors fully and enthusiastically supports Safeway's application for a new store in downtown Los Altos. As chairman of the board, I am proud to report this motion was unanimously approved. I know many of you might have received an email from board members supporting the project. The staff and you and the public have done a thorough job of studying this project. I've heard 15 years, 4 years, I count 6 years with some letters that we've seen. It's time to move forward. Safeway has made great efforts to mitigate any concerns presented. I think they've been more than forthcoming and doing whatever was needed. The new Safeway, along with many of the other projects planned or in progress, will make for an active, vital downtown with great opportunities for business. People will choose to come downtown because of the decisions you're making tonight. The Chamber supports the new Safeway project, and we ask that you move forward with the whole project and approve it tonight. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Harry Price, who will be followed by Larry Gardner. So if Larry would come and take that seat, that would be great. Thanks.
Larry has been delayed. I don't think he's here yet.
I will stick him at the end. Thank you for letting me know. Mr. Price.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council members. First of all, you complimented Mr. Packard. Let me join in that, as well as the city staff, for doing an outstanding job for bringing, hopefully to culmination, something that has been talked about for many, many years. And I also wish to speak. First of all, it's Harry Price. My address is 40 Main Street. I'm here as president of LAVA. I've sent you an email on behalf of LAVA. Our board of directors also has voted unanimously in favor of supporting this project. There were only 2 cautionary comments during our meetings. One dealt with parking. Of course, the agreement's been in flux, so we didn't have a chance to go into the details of the parking agreement. But I will ask a question that maybe can be explained to the public about parking. And the other question was about signage. Safeway tonight has already answered our concerns about signage. We want to make sure that the public is aware of public parking. As far as parking, our concerns were, is 90 minutes enough? We know, anecdotally, the city of Menlo Park just imposed 60 minutes in their downtown parking to a huge uproar. 60, inadequate, completely. Is 90 enough? That's a good question. We would, of course, have preferred a slightly longer period of time. And my question specifically on this draft is under paragraph 8.2 about the, shall we say, the termination fees. And it's not my board's question. It's really just my question. I, too, as Councilmember Cassis does, I, too, compliment the legal expertise of Mr. Packard. And the question is, as I read it at first blush, is it counterintuitive? Is it a carrot and stick that the stick is harder the first 5 years but less the last 5 years or thereafter, as opposed to just a constant stick, shall we say? And I don't know what the background is of why it's that way, but I would think that some members of the public who want to view this sarcastically may question that issue. But we support the project and thank Safeway for its persistence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Sam Pesner, who will be followed by Brian Whitlock. And again, Brian, if you could come, Mr. Whitlock, if you could come up and sit in the seat, that'd be great. So.
Madam Mayor, Council, I'm Sam Pesner. I'm a business owner in the Village, Los Altos Optometric Group on 2nd Street. I'm the immediate past chair of the Chamber of Commerce and a member of LAVA. I am speaking on behalf of the Chamber. I'd like to read a part of a letter that was sent to the City Council. It says, Dear Mayor Carpenter and Council members, the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce urges the City of Los Altos to make every effort to enable Safeway to construct its downtown store. We firmly believe that the long-term benefits of an enhanced lifestyle Safeway at this location will be significant. The advantages of a revitalized Safeway include more customer shopping in our downtown, a visually enhanced First Street corridor, and recapturing the sales tax revenues for our city that are currently going to neighboring communities. There's a little bit more. This is signed by Roy Jones, Chairman of the Board. It's dated February 21st, 2008. So the Chamber of Commerce, as Chairman David has said, supports this, and we urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Brian Whitlock, who will be followed by Mike Costa. And if you could come up and sit in this seat, that's great. Thanks. Mr. Whitlock.
Good evening, Council. I'm Brian Whitlock. I've lived in Los Altos over 30 years. I've had a business in downtown Los Altos for over 30 years. I've now moved to Rancho. But the Safeway store has been not a problem, it's been a concern and an issue for so long that I think we need to say it's been done. We've looked at all the different contingencies, the parking. 5 days a year they say they'll exceed their limits. I don't think that's too much for us to have a problem with. I hope you support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mike Costa, followed by Jim Wing. Again, Mr. Wing, if you'd come up here, that'd be great.
Mayor, Council, my name is Mike Costa. I live at 1061 Via del Pozo in Los Altos, 15 years with my wife and daughters. I'm also a retail real estate broker for 25 years in the Bay Area. And I strongly am in favor of a new Safeway in downtown. It's not going to just provide a new grocery store, but it provides a meeting place. It'll benefit other retail tenants that are there, as well as coming to the area and owners. In my opinion, I can't think of a greater event for a downtown than bringing a new anchor like a grocery store. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Wing, Jim Wing, followed by Carol Beatty. If Carol could come and sit in that front seat, that'd be great. Mr. Wing?
I'm Jim Wing. I live on Milverton Road. I, too, support this project. It's a great store that actually probably fits this very difficult site, which is quite an achievement. I particularly like this view that you're seeing on the screen right now. It is the showpiece view of this building, but the sketch isn't quite right because there are 442 string lights above this intersection. And as you stand in front of the Caubry and you look, you're going to look up through those string lights. 28 months ago, Council approved these string lights, but there was a parking lot there, very appropriate. Now we have a showpiece. At the same meeting, Council removed the string lights from the 4 downtown intersections because you didn't want to block the view of the building. Well, that reasoning is still there today. So I recommend that you remove the string lights from this intersection so we can see this building. Now, you're already acting on about 5 other streetscape items as part of this plan here. The crosswalks, the sidewalks, the driveway cuts and things like that, the trees in streetscape. So I feel that this is also a consideration to make this building a showpiece that we can see. And also, ex-Mayor Packard, anyway, thank you for the wiggle room.
Okay. Our next speaker, Carol Beatty, followed by Charles Geschke.
Carol Beatty, Council and Mayor, thank you very much for your consideration of this Safeway. I live at 600 Milverton Road, Los Altos, California, and I've been observing this process 5 out of the last 15 years, and to me, 33% of their attempts certainly the last 5 have been serious attempts on the part of Safeway, based on what I've read as well as fairly intimate with the details. I would say that Los Altos would like to fashion itself after Burlingame, Menlo Park, and Los Gatos in terms of the kind of Safeway that they have approved. When you look at the kind of towns that those are and how we like to see ourselves, whether we call ourselves a village or a town, this is the kind of Safeway that is not only well-deserved. I think it's an amazing negotiation that Safeway and the city have come to. I mean, the opportunities of the kind of parking that they're offering us as citizens, whether we walk from town, as some of us live nearby, or the kinds of parking where people may come far to investigate what the future town might provide. And the negotiations of this kind of parking, I think, are unprecedented when you look at Burlingame, Menlo Park, and Los Gatos as it relates to those kinds of towns and their parking issues. I would certainly encourage you to vote yes. I think this is it for Safeway. If we don't say yes to them now, we're going to have to drive down to San Antonio Road. And that's not very green of us, is it? You know, this is a great opportunity. I would encourage you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles Geschke, followed by our next speaker, Beth Stewart.
Hi, I'm Chuck Geschke, and I've been a resident of Los Altos for 29 years, and I've been a resident on University Avenue for 15 years, and I'm a neighbor right across the street, and I think this is an incredibly nice view from all sides of the building. And I think it's important to the vitality of downtown that we have a landmark store like this available. It's high time that we get out of the 1960s and move into the 21st century. I compliment Safeway. They've been incredibly patient. I can't imagine a corporation that's worked harder to get a village's or town's acceptance than they have. And if we refuse it now, I think they would be well advised to just give up. And I don't think any of us want to see that happen. I can't speak for my other neighbors on University, but as a neighbor on University, I'm very happy with this project, and I want to see it go forward. I urge you to vote for it.
Okay.
Miss
Thank
Mayor,
you. Question,
Chuck,
Mr. Geschke, if you could stay at the podium, we have a question from council.
If you wouldn't mind a question. Earlier today, I spent some time on your street trying to catch your neighbors and yourself to ask the question of the height of the wall on the northern side of the property adjacent to Foothill Expressway. My fear was, I guess I'll talk about my thoughts on it later, but my question for you is, would you have a preference between a 19-foot 6-inch wall or a 14-foot wall on that side?
I'm going to speak only for myself.
Yes.
I'd be perfectly happy with the 14-foot wall.
And
because whatever we can do to reduce mass improves the overall looks of the property. And unless there's some obvious reason based on an acoustical engineer about why that would cause a problem for the people who are more adjacent to that part of the building than I am, I certainly have no reason to want it to be 19 instead of 14.
Okay.
And we have one other question. No question. Thank you. Our next speaker is Beth Stewart, and followed by Mel Kahn.
Hi. My name is Beth Stewart. I live directly across from the proposed Safeway store, and specifically directly across from the 19-foot wall. But my primary interest this evening is to advocate some additional changes to the foliage and greenscape on the wall. I would like to advocate, in agreement with the Safeway people who have worked together with Kirk Hansen, myself, Jackie Rupp, Abigail Aarons. They are an excellent group of people. I have nothing but compliments in regards to their sensitivity. I ask the City Council to be very sensitive to our need to sort of minimize the mass of this wall by creating a beautiful long-lasting greenscape. It is my understanding from Mr. Jett that the additional greenscape, which will truly cover most of the wall, will not interfere with any of the city's trees, and I advocate that, again, we incorporate that. It is beautifully done. I'm going to hand this, perhaps you can pass it down. It incorporates a number of different bushes, which will really add to the beauty and long-lasting elegance of that wall facing our neighborhood, a neighborhood that we take great pride in, we love, that is a heart center of our city, and we hope that you will make or pass an agreement with all of our support and the Safeway, who is very supportive of it, this additional greenscape. Additionally, in regards to signage that was previously mentioned, there is a sign at both ends of the store directed at traffic that would be coming in both directions. Thank you.
Hey, I think we have questions for you. If you could stay, Ms. Stewart, at the podium. Yes, Mr. Cassidy.
So I appreciate Jared's question of Mr. Getchke. It's the same question for you. It sounds like you're okay with the reduction of bulk and mass associated with
I will speak for myself only. I was not the initiator of the higher wall.
Okay.
But as long as the wall is adequately screening both sound and light pollution directly into our home, I think appropriate, adequate height of that wall would be agreeable to me.
And I do have a question, too. One more question. The illustration that you passed out to council is the same, I just want to confirm, as what was shown by Safeway in their presentation as what they are recommending we approve tonight. Is that your understanding?
Right. And as a matter of fact, we have taken up the time of the landscape architect, Bruce Jett, and with, I believe, the architect's agreement that they are willing to have this really lovely wall established. It will take a number of years if everybody can appreciate that plants don't grow overnight. And we just ask that, a maintenance schedule that's reasonable to maintain the Safeway. And since the trees now, I understand, are Los Altos' business to maintain, an attached greenscape on the wall is Safeway's, then you make the appropriate assessments to either party. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I think we're good. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mel Kahn, followed by John Baer.
My name is Mel Kahn, and I've lived here longer than I like to admit. Kahn's property, I do have some property in town, and I thought I should remain. I always end up talking about parking, and I'd like to just take a minute to talk about the parking and the little bigger picture on the parking, because it is underparked, the Safeway store. How much, there's different numbers that you hear. Hopefully this will work. I do feel, though, that and I don't exactly understand, it sounds like it would be $1 million after 5 years, and they can get out of whatever is going on. And if it was causing us problems at that point, it would seem like $1 million for someone like Safeway isn't a huge amount of money. We've had we've lost some other parking places up in that area and of town in the last year or so, and we will be losing a fair amount. There's a lot of people park over at the First Street area that I'm not exactly sure where they're going to park. We're at the First and Main building when that comes down, and I feel that all of these actions are really going to affect us in a few years from now. I don't think it'll happen right away, but I believe we're going to be in trouble. And so one of the things that I'm concerned about is that there's a number of funds that have been, people have underparked, and the funds have gone into the city treasury, and I want to say that I'm concerned that those funds could be earmarked for other projects or perhaps the new Civic Center. And I think it's extremely important that these funds be set up because I believe because of all these things that have occurred, well, you got the point.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Baer, followed by Randy Lamb.
John Baer, 55 Pepper Drive. I'm on the Planning Commission. I'm here speaking as a 14-year resident of the city. I am very much looking forward to a new Safeway. I think we all are as a community. There's been obviously a lot of work and discussion and debate and great work by Councilman Packard to negotiate. I'm looking forward to Safeway getting their project underway. I have two wishes. One is that the parking solution as proposed works, that it works for Safeway and for the city, because if it doesn't work, it's not good for any of us. And my second wish is that First Street stays as unclogged as possible because we've all lived through that nightmare already. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Randy Lamb, followed by James Randolph.
Madam Mayor and council members, Randy Lamb. We've been a property owner in Los Altos now for 18 years. We own a large project down the street, as you might know, and we plan to build there this year, if at all possible. So I wanted to thank you all. This is thankless work. You all spend hours and hours of time doing this. We work in a number of cities. Thank you for doing it. And I also wanted to thank staff. Having had projects here before, I know how much time, how diligent your staff is. They are among the best in any city in terms of what they do. Zach, David, James, Doug, you should all be proud of them. And I know for us that work in this town and for other towns, they set themselves aside in terms of how good they are. This applicant has spent numerous years working on this, as long as we've been a property owner, and I commend them and I commend you for working on solutions for this project. I think this will be a great downtown pedestrian generating use. No project is ever perfect, but this one, thanks to you for the parking work, all of you. I mean, no project is ever perfect, and this one, I think, from the amount of stakeholder input and the amount of work that's been done on staff, Safeway, the city, I would suggest and I recommend tonight that all of you really try to take action tonight on this if you can. I know there are things that are in everyone's minds in terms of questions, et cetera, and you've certainly got the applicant here to be able to ask questions of and staff, but congratulations. This is going to be a great use for downtown, and I think it's going to be a complementary use that you'll all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, James Randolph, followed by Larry Gardner.
Hello, members of the council. My name is Jim Randolph, 1155 Diamond Court. I've been a resident in Los Altos for 30 years, and I guess I'd have to frame myself as a Safeway shopper, and I've shopped this store for a number of years until I moved over to the Rancho area, and I think the feeling in this town that I get, and talking to people, and you certainly hear it tonight, there's a strong support for this store, and it's needed in the downtown. It'll act as an anchor to help bring in new customers to the downtown, and hopefully this new store on Safeway's behalf will bring back some of those customers that have been lost shopping this thing and finding out they had to go to the other store in order to get some of the goods they wanted. The design of this store, if you go compare to the other new stores that they have built in Pleasanton or Los Gatos, this is a superior design. It is as customized a grocery store in a downtown area that we could all be extremely proud of. And someone said earlier it's a landmark for this corner, but it's going to help everybody, because the number one thing is you hear and you talk to any mom or dad on a soccer team or anywhere, it's like, well, what can we do for downtown? You got to do something to bring people back. And a lot of times it's not individuals, it's families. Well, a grocery store and the other things that we're talking about, the improvements to residential, are really making a big difference. The streetscape. So the downtown has rebounded strongly, and I think we've got a lot of momentum, and I just hope you don't delay this any longer. It's needed, and I want to thank Safeway for their patience in this whole procedure. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker would be Larry Gardner. Is Larry here? As I announced earlier, our process is normally to not accept any new cards. However, after the first speaker begins, we did get one card, and the city attorney has advised me that I should allow him to speak. So Kirk Hansen will be our last speaker, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I apologize for arriving late. I was saving the ethics of the Internet this evening. I want to simply speak in support of this project. I live at 186 University, directly across dead center of the new project. Worked with Safeway over at least the last 2 iterations and feel that they've been very responsive. I think the project is absolutely critical to downtown. I think it'll create an amenity that will benefit all of us. I think that Safeway has done the work that's needed to try to make this not have externalities that affect the neighbors, and so I'm quite pleased with that. As I outlined in my letter, there were 2 concerns, which was the additional vegetation and the question of this light pollution from the extension across from State Street, and I wasn't here for the earlier presentation and such, so I apologize for that. But as long as that's addressed, I would strongly urge you to go forward with this project tonight, and I think it'll be a very great asset for all of us.
Thank you. We have several questions for you, so I'll start with, no, not for Mr. Packard, Mr. Fishbaum.
I have a question regarding the height of the wall on the northern side of the parcel.
Right.
It has been suggested that potentially a 14-foot wall could provide the same acoustical benefit as the 19-foot wall. Would you have a preference?
This is, excuse me, I'm not having been here. This is on where the loading dock is?
Correct.
I'm not equipped to judge the acoustical benefit.
Mm-hmm.
I think less bulk is better, and so that's my instinct. But it would be an improvement. Any wall there will be an improvement over the current situation, and so I'd be very glad to get 14 feet. Do I hear 15?
Are there any other questions for Mr. Hansen? Okay. Seeing none, I will close public comments. Thank you. And now we will allow the applicant 5 minutes to respond to any questions or make a final presentation.
I'd like to also thank staff. They've been great to work with. It's been a long journey. Zach, Doug Schmitz, James Walgren. I want to address a couple of things. I want to make it important or have you understand that the 90 minutes is important for Safeway. So if we can't agree to 90 minutes, we could have a problem. So I want that to be clear. The other thing that's important is at year 6, the opt-out needs to be no more than $1.5 million. That's the only way I can get the corporation to agree with it. So another key term. The green screen exhibit, I want to mention too that you have actually is a little bit different. We had removed 3 trees when we added the green screen. Zach said, no, you can add green screen maybe, but you're not removing any trees, so we'll put those trees back. So I wanted to be clear on that. The sound wall, it sounds like everybody's okay with the wall, but just to be clear, the truck height is about 13.5, so if we have it 14 or 14.5, it'll block the lights from the truck. The last thing is the opt-out. So there were 2 provisions for opt-out. One is if the city approves something downtown that has an adverse effect on parking and changes the parking, then we should be able to have the right to opt out at any time. And there was a misunderstanding because we agreed that we wouldn't exercise any opt-out likely for any period of time. And to make that palatable, we agreed to a high number. So if we do opt out, it's a big number at $2.8 million. So the $500,000, however, is our feeling is that you have complete control of that. The only thing that would give us an ability to opt out at $500,000 is if you approve a project that doesn't have parking and they pay you an in lieu fee instead of parking, but there's no parking anywhere. So it's something that you have complete control over that we don't have any control over, and that was also a key important component for Safeway. So the $500,000 in the first 5 years is only if you make a change downtown that changes the parking ratio downtown. And with that, I think I've answered everything. Do you have any questions?
If I could, Mr. Packard? Many questions.
You know, we've been on the phone a lot the last few days, and if I understand correctly, what you're saying is if we approve some project where it's less than 95% of the ratio, the op price is still 2.88 million, but it's 500,000. Well, it's automatically 500,000 less because you paid up front 500,000, but it's an additional 500,000, or it's a total of 500,000.
It's an additional 500,000.
Yeah. So it'd be a million.
A million.
No, what was it?
500 and 500.
It's 2.88 minus 500.
No. The 2.8 is only as it relates. There's two opt-out provisions. One is Safeway's sole discretion, and that's for the $2,000,008. The other opt-out is if the city changes the parking ratio downtown, because the reason Safeway approved this and the reason we're here tonight is our understanding from the city is that you're solving parking. You're not going to make the parking ratio less than what it is today. So if something changes downtown and you put a movie theater next to us and they aren't adequately parked, we have the right to opt out for $1 million, of which we've already paid $5 in the first 5 years.
Okay. I understand your position.
Okay.
Questions? Let me get to Ms. Satterley, your question.
Yes, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say this design review and use permit application is going to be approved. What can you tell me about construction timeline?
We will immediately start our construction documents, and that takes 90 days, and then go in for building permit. My understanding is the permit process isn't too lengthy, so we can assume that it's 2 to 4 months for building permit, and we would begin construction. The construction period is a 10-month construction period for this store.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Mayor Pro Tem Fishbaugh?
One of the questions that I have is actually shown here in this picture. The specific question is regarding whether or not there is a dip between the driveway entrance. As it is today, there's a little bit of a dip as you go into Safeway. And I think one of the questions that our resident neighbor asked was regarding the height of the short wall on the State Street entrance. And I went online and I found that according to the California Vehicle Code, you cannot have your headlights more than 54 inches above the ground, which is the equivalent to 4 foot 6 inches, which is also the height of the wall there. So I assume that should the car be traveling level and the headlights don't have too much of a dip to them, we've got the problem knocked out with this 4 foot 6 inch wall because it's the same height as the big pickup trucks that you see driving down the street that have mud flying out the sides and everything.
I actually have an exhibit, but it's in your package, and essentially the grade of the site is coming down. Mm-hmm. So today you actually enter the site and you go up.
Yeah.
And so we're going to grade it down so it's actually level with First Street. In fact, toward the middle of the site, about halfway back in that driveway, it goes down a foot and then it comes back up 9 inches. So there's a drain in the middle of that, stormwater drain in the middle of that driveway. So it is level with First Street. The site's coming down to the level of First Street.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Other questions? Okay.
Unrelated, there was a statement that Safeway, it's not a big deal to talk about $1 million. I did a quick back of the envelope calculation, and I may be mistaken, tell me if I'm off base, but I calculated your profit on an annual basis to be roughly $400,000 per store. And I took your Q4, and the reason why I said that is because I think there's this assumption that you have high profit margins, knowing the model that you guys operate within, the grocery business has notoriously low profit margins.
Absolutely, very low.
And so I just wanted to, I think I'm pretty close to that, but I just want to make sure I articulated that at this one store over a period of time, it's best case scenario, $400,000.
And did you take that based on the sales tax revenue generation?
No, I actually took it on your net income on a quarterly basis.
On the annual report.
And then I looked at your variations in the quarters, and then I divided by the number of stores that you have.
Oh, okay. So an average number. Yeah. So this store is not a regional location. It's more, it's going to cater to Los Altos and Los Altos Hills. So it's not going to be a high volume store. So are we planning to set aside an extra $1.5 million to opt out? The answer is no. It'll be a real serious problem if we have to opt out. And this will be another thing that goes back up to the chairman of the board, because we don't have, a store is not going to be able to support $1.5 million. It would have to come from capital.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to turn the discussion over to council.
Did you close the hearing?
Close the public comments. All right, I did it. And now, would you like to start, Mr. Packard?
Thank you. Well, no one spoke against approval of this project, and I suppose I should probably disclose who I've spoken to over the past while. I've spoken to an awful lot of people, and some people who expressed concerns and some people who were supportive, but there's been an awful lot of people with whom I've spoken and communicated with. I've looked at a lot of emails. I've met with the Passerelle group that's been insightful, their comments. I've spent an awful lot of time with Deb and her attorneys. Let's see. I think I spoke to a number of planning commissioners and reporters and Paul Nyberg and a lot of different people, so including my wife, the most important. Having said that, I think we have a great opportunity. They're talking about spending $22 million on this project. That's what it's going to cost them. And I personally believe that we will have excess parking. I think that's going to benefit Los Altos. I'm really counting on them not being able to raise the funds. They're going to have to go through a lot of bureaucracy if they want to opt out. I wanted it to be the same price the whole time period, but you can only negotiate what you can negotiate. And it wasn't just me, it was city staff too. So. And so the comments I heard of what you would like and more than 90 minutes, all those things we wanted and tried for. So having heard all of that, I'd like to make a motion. And the motion is to certify the mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact. I have found no I've found no credible evidence, having read all the materials in the packet and heard the testimony today. I heard no credible evidence, and there's no foundation to any statements I've said or heard or read that would suggest that that anything contained in the mitigated negative declaration is inappropriate.
I'd just like to clarify, that should read adopt the mitigated
I want to adopt
yes. That's just
the
words
mitigated negative declaration, and I make that motion, along with all the findings related thereto.
So it's been moved and seconded to adopt a mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact. That's the motion on the table. I think what I'd like to do is, before we vote, is to take any further comments from council. So is there, would you like to make any comments on
the mitigated negative deck? No, I'm ready to move on to the next one.
Okay. So, all right, seeing no other comments, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Can I move the approval with the modifications?
Say what?
Of the negative deck?
Of the design review and use permit application? Okay. Because I think there are a number of modifications we wanted to make. One is to the condition of number 3 to add that the maintenance be all green screens, not just those on First Street. And the second is to allow staff to work with the applicant to reduce the height of the wall with the adjacent property owner at 110 First Street, and also to work with the applicant to reduce the wall at the loading dock to make sure that the height ensures that the light and acoustic issues are addressed, but is not of unnecessary height beyond meeting those two needs.
So it's been,
That's my motion.
well, David actually, okay, so it's been,
Is that, that's the design review, right?
And use permit.
And you,
Yeah, it's conditional.
not yet the parking agreement.
Not yet the parking agreement. And I would like to make one clarification with staff. We currently have a resolution before us that includes Exhibit B, which has the old parking terms. So how would you like us to handle that in the motion? Should we say Exhibit B to be determined? How do we handle that?
Are you talking about, well, the parking term sheet was approved, and that was just referencing that the parking agreement would...
Well, the parking terms have been changed.
Yes.
So the Exhibit B is no longer accurate, does not reflect the negotiations to date.
It would be the parking terms as reflected in the proposed shared parking agreement. And then there's...
so do you,
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
not final.
which is not final. Can
And then
we
there's a
move
reference
forward
in the
with?
staff report of the revised parking.
And so let's imagine we do that, and the final parking term agreement is somewhat revised. How do we handle that? Can we simply have Exhibit B come back to us with the final terms reflected, and move forward with this motion?
Well, we don't need the parking term sheet to come back again. What we need is pursuant to the condition, this project is conditioned to be, the council and the city, you need to approve it. The city needs to enter into a shared parking agreement with Safeway that would be consistent with the approved terms, which has now been outlined in the new draft shared parking agreement. So the term sheet isn't necessary at this point to come back. If you want anything to
can we just
come...
remove Exhibit B from the package?
Well, it was there to outline what the previous terms were that got this project to be where it is right now.
So are you proposing we replace Exhibit B with a copy of the draft?
Is that what?
Parking agreement?
No, I think you just leave it as is, and you just follow through with condition, it's condition 10, that the shared parking agreement shall be substantially in compliance with the parking term sheet that's contained in Exhibit B. That
Which
can
is
remain.
where I'm having a problem, because there are changes to what is in Exhibit B,
Yes.
just in the staff report, and from Councilmember Packard's oral statements, I believe there are changes from what is in the staff report as well. So I don't want to unnecessarily tie us to old agreements in the shared parking agreement.
Why don't we say that it's subject to
Well, you could
an agreement between the city and Safeway as to a parking agreement, without specifying the terms.
What if you just left the first sentence in and took everything else out?
The applicant shall execute the shared parking agreement.
Well, no. Then the form and content of the shared parking agreement shall be reviewed by city manager or his designee and the city attorney. I think, yeah, so that you might want to leave that in. Or the other option is the parking.
How about the shared parking agreement shall be in substantial compliance with the oral report given by Councilmember Packard?
I can say in terms of process, the intent was always, because the parking terms were approved some time ago by council. That's a document that was presented and approved by city council. So substantially in compliance, we could change those words, but the idea was always that the parking agreement would be an evolutionary, successive document. Substantially in compliance, or as otherwise amended by council. But that was meant to set the basis in terms of number of parking spaces, shared numbers, 90 minutes, all those kinds of basics, but it never was meant to say.
So how about, let me try this. For condition number 10, the second sentence, the shared parking agreement shall be in substantial compliance with the parking agreement term sheet or as agreed to by the parties. I think we've negotiated a better deal than Exhibit B. Okay, excellent.
So you accept that? So it's been moved and seconded. I have some comments, if no one else does, on this whole thing before we vote, but are there other folks who wish to comment?
I think that I just wanted to clarify. We heard from a member of the public as well as in Safeway's application, we had different green screening along the Foothill Expressway side. I wanted to clarify what green screening is incorporated in this motion.
I'm open to whatever people agree on that.
I thought you said three things. I thought you said that
I said the maintenance of the green screen. We have seen three different rear elevations, so I guess I would amend my motion to state that the final
the most recent rendition that they provided,
as long as the street trees are maintained.
So the most recent, the Safeway presentation plus the putting back of the trees, which the applicant said they would do. Yes. Okay. Do you accept that?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments? I do have comments. So I just also wanted to declare my ex parte conversations. I also met with Safeway numerous times on this project. I'd just like to note, too, that Safeway is one of the largest property owners in downtown Los Altos. They have a 1.7-acre site here. And personally, I'm delighted to have this project before us at long last with such broad-based community support from the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce, the Lavas Board, the Los Altos Village Station Board, the residents, business owners, property owners. It makes our job much easier. I personally believe that Los Altons want and deserve a brand-new Safeway that will offer a much greater selection of items than the current outdated store that was built in 1967 can offer. I think it's a pleasing design that works well on the site, and it will generate increased property tax revenues for the city and for our schools, plus increased sales tax revenues for the city. This innovative parking solution more than replaces the current and contemplated parking reductions from the city infrastructure improvement projects, and it works because the demand, the differing peak usage time demand in the city now, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. is when we hit our peak usage, and for Safeway, 4 to 6 p.m. So the shared parking works because of those differences in peak usage. And I think this will benefit not only Safeway in the city generally, but nearby property owners and tenants. We know that some of their customers are already parking in the Safeway existing private lot. So now they will be public, and that will be allowed. I'm pleased with the change in the signage that were presented here. That's very important to me. This whole program turns on people being able to understand that the parking is public, both the covered and the uncovered parking. So I was fine with what was presented here. I was looking for that public parking listed everywhere you say parking. I understand that the employee parking management plan is to come back to council as part of the parking agreement. Is that our expectation or not?
We're not done yet.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'd also like to remind you that we have a revised Condition 11 on the signage that I think you should incorporate, too. Or
the revision,
the maker of the motion.
Yeah, the revision is included in my motion.
Oh, okay.
As presented in the drawings today, right? I want to make sure that is okay. So are we expecting a employee parking management plan to come back to council or not? That's a question for staff.
No, I don't think so. I think we spelled it out in Article 14.
Okay. And
just today.
Okay. And I would just ask staff to bring back the string lights on First Street for council review. That would be my request to look
I'd second that.
So there's 3 there. And myself, I could support the reduction of the lower wall height along Foothill and the lower green screen height. But I'd like to see the project move forward tonight.
I do have. We're moving along pretty fast, so I do want to state my ex parte communications. I have met with interested individuals who own property on First Street, Safeway, community members, Planning Commission members, about this project. However, there's been no material information that has not been presented tonight that has changed my thinking on the project before us. So I just wanted to state that.
Any other discussion? Okay.
I'm delighted that we were able to take into account the reduction in the wall height on the northern side. I put that shoe leather to work this afternoon and tried to get out there and meet with some of our neighbors on the university side. And I think that the work that has gone into this project over many years, I was probably in high school when this was initially proposed, and I'm delighted the work that our neighbors have put into this. Safeway reaching out to the community and working with neighbors has been a delight. I've heard so many positive comments from people that have interacted in your community forums, and the changes that they see and the speed that the changes have been implemented into the design. I applaud you for your work. Thank you also for your work with the parking agreement, Ron. My ex parte communication includes community members, property owners on First Street, as well as I've spoken with Safeway and probably a similar gamut as mentioned by other council members. But I'm delighted that I'm able to be a part of this Safeway proposal. So,
Any further council comments? So, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Can we take our break now?
There's one more item, the parking agreement.
Oh, right.
So the last item is is the parking agreement. Do we need to take a position? Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would. Now, first, I'd like to make a comment. In fairness to Safeway, they didn't get. I think there was a misunderstanding, and on this clause, and it seems fair that if we start approving projects without adequate parking within that area, it is going to cause a problem to Safeway, and we just have to take into account the fact that their success is dependent on having shoppers, and the shoppers having adequate parking. So I think it falls on us to be responsible in what we approve and not approve. So I would recommend, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this parking agreement with all the changes I articulated before, except for the one on 8.2. Except we need to, I think you want to include the word reduced after shall be reduced. It's right now shall be by. So that would be made. Also the wording of 8.1 needs to be clarified, but that's very minor. It's not substantive, and the other changes I mentioned. So my motion is we go ahead and approve this at this point.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Question for the Safeway. If you'd come to the podium, please.
I would like to call up the representative next to.
I think the only. First of all, I want to thank staff and Councilmember Packard. You're really wonderful to work with, and you're very lucky you have a first-class staff here. I think the only question really, and we concur completely with all the comments and changes, appreciate the approval. I think the only question we have is at least our understanding is the fee, if the parking ratio dips below the baseline, it's always $500,000, whether it's the first year, second year, fifth year, 10th year. And if you use the word reduced, to me at least that suggests that it's a higher figure. And that's why I think it should be clearly stated as the $500,000 figure. At least that's our understanding.
Right.
Correct.
It's $1 million less than $500,000.
Correct. And if we just clarify, that's all we're asking for.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's
for coming
been moved and seconded. Further council discussion?
Yes, so I stand by what I said before. I'm going to take a very unusual step, and I'm going to abstain from this vote because I don't think it would be appropriate for the record to reflect that I'm opposed to this agreement. I am neither in favor nor opposed to it, having not read it.
You're not a speed reader, huh?
You had a comment?
Right. Ron, I'd like, if possible, if we're going to vote on this right here, I'd like to go over a couple of things.
Sure.
The first one is the parking area. What is clearly the parking area?
The 3 exhibits should have been here. Where are the 3 exhibits, or the 4 exhibits?
They were prepared and distributed, but I have one right here I can hand out.
Okay. Were they up here for us? Were they put up here? Or they're just emailed to us? Okay, there it is. It was emailed to you earlier today.
Do we want to? Yeah, let's put it on the projector so that the public
Everyone
can
can
see
see
as well. And then while that's going up, the question that I have is the square footage that's going to be incorporated into this. I want to be clear. This includes all retail and commercial square footage. Is that correct?
Yes, all retail, commercial, but not residential. If there is any, I'm not sure there is any residential.
So this goes back to the term sheet that was approved in October. That's when this was identified, and this was negotiated also. This wasn't our original boundary, but the boundary goes basically down the center line of Main Street, east to 2nd Street, basically down the center line of 2nd Street, north until the alignment with the center of Shasta, and it takes in the parcel at 2nd Street there, and then comes back to Foothill. So it includes all those parcels, and I think there are very well maybe some residential parcels there in that northeast corner, but that was the boundary that's in our approved term sheet. And so what we'll need to do now is just evaluate all of the existing parking, public and private, and then come up with a total building square footage number, and that will establish the numbers.
And Jerry, you can see how big the Safeway parcel is, and the idea is parking available there is going to be potentially utilized by all those properties. That was the intent.
Right.
Who's willing to walk to go to a place of business, and we thought those were the properties.
One big question I have: we have in this red box, we have the First and Main property. Currently, there's 0 square footage of commercial office space there, and there's a significant amount of parking. Is that included in the ratio that we're going to define, or are we going to anticipate a building such as the one proposed right now for the First and Main development?
The latter. The agreement will be based on conditions of First Street when it's completed, which will eliminate the parking spaces, which are going to be eliminated shortly in any event, and also the parking spaces that would be eliminated in front of the Safeway store when the store is built.
Could I confirm that, Deb and Michael? That's your understanding, isn't it? Yes. Okay, they just affirmed that is their understanding.
Okay. Thank you guys for having this exhibit. This helps me understand it, and it runs from Main Street over to the Whitney cut through there, the little short street there, and incorporate Shasta. Sorry about that. Yes, Shasta, and incorporates Plaza 7 as well as Plaza 4, I believe. Is that basically correct? Okay. So the second one I wanted to go over is the pricing. I understand that we have a $500,000 total. I'll talk in totals, assuming the $500,000 at the beginning is paid. If we drop below the predefined ratio, it's $1 million regardless of the time, which includes the $500,000 paid up front. So it would be an effective $500,000 additional dollar payment to opt out if we adjust the parking ratio. The second is it's $2.88 million for the first 5 years with no decline in the parking ratio.
If we have no decline in the parking ratio, well, we can't have a decline. No decline more than 5%.
Right.
Then it's $1 million. It's $2.88 million, with a credit for the $500 they already paid.
Okay. And then the third pricing option is that at year 6, and this is year 6 from the day the door opens on the new Safeway?
It's from the day the door opens is when it commences, not today. So they've got to, the commencement date is when they open for business, but they are entitled, and you know, whether it's a 1 year, 2 year, I tried for a 2 year notice and ended up 1 and ended up being 6 months. But the 6 month notice can be given at 4.5 years. You know, I want you to understand. So the out date could be on the day after 5 years.
For the one, and that'll be at a $1.5 million payout,
yes,
which is less $500,000 paid in advance, so it would be $1 million. Okay, so I think, and those are the only 3 pricing options for this agreement.
That's right.
So, okay, I think
Oh, it's subject to inflation.
subject to inflation, and we are using CPI?
Every 5 years.
CPI, okay. So that covers pricing. My last one is I just want to get a ballpark understanding of our 5% of wiggle room. And
here's my understanding, and James can clarify it. I think we don't have an accurate count. We think we've got about 250 of public parking places, and then you look at how many private parking places. Now, up in the parking district, we probably have very, very few. We have a few along Amanda's property over here, Passerell's property, and we're going to have a number over here.
okay, so it includes both public and private parking.
Yeah, public and private. So it might be 350 or so. And if you take 5% of 350, I'm not a mathematician. What is that?
17.
17. So that's
Okay.
about what it would be.
Okay, and then the other side of that is looking at it from a square footage of commercial and retail office space. Is it safe to assume that we have 200,000 square feet in this area of retail and commercial office space? Is that ballpark?
That number we haven't collected yet, but our expectation, why we're not too concerned about this particular provision, is our goal is to gain additional parking, particularly in this area, and add to that net supply of parking. So the idea that we would start to lose parking, the only parking that we want to have wiggle room for is for specific improvements. Parking restriping, ADA spaces, and other types of improvements. So.
I just want to clarify this because if we were to add, there are properties owned on State Street by property owners that also own property in other parts of the downtown that are not included in this red box. So if I'm just guessing what options might happen if there were to be square footage added to one of the buildings here and their parking agreement provided parking in Plaza 8 or in Plaza 9 and instead of Plaza 7, that would essentially add square footage to this area while not adding any parking to this area. And so if we have about 200,000 square feet of commercial and retail office space there, that would mean that we would have about 10,000 square feet of commercial or retail office space that could be added before we would meet this threshold. So I just wanted to.
And since we're speculating, let me share with you that there is some exploratory discussions about putting an entire second floor of underground parking at First and Main. And if that were to happen, all these concerns would be eliminated.
And that's assuming because we're taking the and that would mean that we're using the parking agreement ratio. Would use one floor of underground.
I was just going to
Just
stay on Safeway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
But we are talking about the ratio, and if
Right.
something like that happened, that'd be 100 additional parking spaces.
right, and I just want to make sure that we're not constraining ourselves to one plaza for additional parking to be added. I want to make sure that we're not binding ourselves to saying that Plaza 7 is the only plaza that we might be able to add parking to. But I'm getting pretty sincere nods that isn't going to be the case. So I've walked through the questions that I had. Thank you for taking the time to entertain me and answer my questions and walk me through this. I feel comfortable that this is following the expectations that we set in our previous discussions. So I would be comfortable to move forward with this. I think this is in the best interest of the community to allow Safeway the confidence that their shared parking agreement is something that the city is comfortable with and would allow them to move forward in the most timely fashion. So,
Mr. Cassis, you have a comment?
Waiting to vote.
Okay, yes. So any further council comments? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Abstain.
Could I say one thing?
Passes 4-0 with 4 and 1 abstention. Okay? Good. Mr. Patrick.
Just let it not be said that Los Altos is anti developer or anti-business. I think this shows that this is the first application Safeway submitted, and we saw it through. So
I do have one thing. I want to commend the Chamber of Commerce, and I want to commend Lava and the business community in this town for fully embracing this store on a unanimous vote, and also the numerous community emails that we received in support of this store. I appreciate the outreach that the community, both business and residents, have shown to get us to this point, and I believe that in the end we have a great project that will be well embraced by the community in a timely construction, and it would be unfortunate to see a misstep with this type of community support on how this may be stalled moving forward. Thank you.
With that, we normally take a break at 9 o'clock. It's 9:05. Please come back, please. No applause, please. Our norms are no applause, no booing, and we'll be back at 9:10. Thanks.
Well, we did it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Here, so your video didn't go well, but you're trying to save the day there. How are you? Good to see you too. Hi. Nice job. You were doing well? Excellent. Everybody should have been announced. That was part of the party. Good job, right? So, congratulations. No worries. Thanks for getting us through it. Absolutely. Exactly. Thanks. Congratulations. That was a big
Quite the negotiator.
I know. It's a design I'm like, pretty much Mayolan is very unique.
Thank you guys. That was for all your work on this project. It's exciting. Yeah. How long did you guys get ready to build? Let's see. What was the first
Yeah, well, the disconnect switch is frozen. We'll get something to prop the door open. I think it's just resolved. Yeah, a little bit. It is fun because now it goes from No, I'll also involve all the qualifications. You know, I was that is going to be, that'll be fun. I was going to say we're going to make it on story. Hopefully we get good yeah, I mean, well, you know us very well. Good to see you. Hi, good to see you. Good to see you. You did a great job. Good to see you. She's so young and she's oh, she's maybe she can't like this other one. I mean, he's had a council member that didn't do the yeah, right. Outside of this one. All right, take care. Have a good night.
I was waiting for like the cheers and claps.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have strong opinions, but when it comes down to it, it's just I know I makes for a great environment to work.
Hi,
I was here last summer.
You were. How long do you think you were
15.
Okay. There may be questions. I don't have any speakers. So, we'll see. We got a lot of email, but there's no one who gets the questions. As soon as I get the last council meeting, I'll get it started.
You know it that early. Well, actually, technically, you got to
Gotta get up again at 6.
exactly. You're only this far in 15, 20 minutes. All right. That's very cool.
Gentlemen?
Take care.
Okay, is staff ready? Okay.
Move denial?
Yeah. Where is our city attorney? Okay. I'd like to, if those of you who are not staying for our last two agenda items could please move outside the chamber, please, so that we can continue our business this evening. We need the city attorney, I think, and then we can get started with item number 11.
Miss Dunaway.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Miss Dunaway.
Ladies and gentlemen, please either be quiet or leave the chamber. Thank you very much.
That was authoritative.
You know, that's why they give me this gavel, right? You know, so. Okay, we are now moving to item number 11, Valley Transportation Authority, VTA El Camino Real Bus Rapid Transit Project. And I don't think there's a staff report for this, so we will begin with a presentation from Steve. You're going to have to help me. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Kevin.
Kevin,
Connolly.
I apologize.
And Steve, I'm with me is Steve Fisher, as well as Adam Berger from our staff, and Carla Vincent is from our consultants. Due to the late hour, and I know you're anxious to get to this item, so I'm going to get right to it. I'll be short and snappy and to the point. What we're here to talk to you about is a Bus Rapid Transit project. I know we came before in June of this year. Mr. Fishpaw, Councilmember Fishpaw, invited us back due to the subsequent work that's occurred since then. And we're happy to share that work with you, which involves a preliminary staff recommendation for a project design that we would like to submit to both Caltrans as well as the Federal Transit Administration. There are multiple layers of government involved in this project. We're going to talk a little bit about the growth in the El Camino, how we're planning for that growth through a transit project, the benefits of the BRT project to accommodate that growth, as well as today's service, the decision process, and then our staff recommendation. And we'll have time at the end where we'll actually walk the alignment in terms of aerial shots and how the different design affects El Camino in different ways. So why are we here? VTA wants to improve the quality of service for our riders today. We also want to attract new riders to the service. More people riding transit is a good thing. We heard direction from policy from our board of directors in 2009. They adopted a Bus Rapid Transit strategic plan that gave us an action item moving forward on 3 corridors: El Camino, Alum Rock Avenue, and Stevens Creek. We also believe that we're consistent with direct policy direction from cities, such as there is. In some cases, cities have done general plan updates. In other cases, cities are involved in general plan updates right now. The Grand Boulevard Initiative is a key part of policy for the El Camino, not just in Santa Clara County, but San Mateo County as well. And then finally, we try to do every project as a cost-effective, high-capacity solution for growing places in this county. Bus Rapid Transit, if you're not familiar with, is coming in a lot of places in California, and particularly Northern California. The Santa Clara Alum Rock project is a fully funded project. That project goes into construction next year. It will be operational by summer of 2014. And then San Francisco has a few projects, and the East Bay has projects. A lot of these projects have received federal funding already, or state-level funding, and these projects are an investment emphasis on both the state and the federal level. In terms of growth and population projection, MTC and the Association for Bay Area Governments is projecting a lot of growth in Santa Clara County. I'm sure you've probably seen charts like this in your planning work for your city. I'm not going to belabor it. In terms of El Camino, how that looks both near-term and long-term, as well as a short band around El Camino, a quarter mile, is longer one with a half a mile. There's a lot of growth in that corridor projected for each of the cities, and there's 6 cities that share this corridor as we define it from downtown San Jose to Palo Alto. As you can see, Los Altos doesn't have a huge share of El Camino, but there's sort of a proportional amount of growth that is occurring. 10% on your small section is pretty significant. So without El Camino, and as we do a lot of public outreach, and we've done a lot for this project, there's questions about what El Camino looks like with this project, what El Camino looks like without this project. And without the project, given that level of growth, there's some significant changes occurring on that street. Vehicle miles traveled increased by 35%. Vehicle hours increased by 100%. And the peak hour traffic volume increases in a lot of places in this county. 12% on El Camino, 35% on Central, and then 63% on Foothill. The benefits in terms of the transit is that we can have a much faster service. It's branded. It appeals to a different market segment. There's flexibility in the alignment. And we offer something like rail. It's Wi-Fi, prepaid fare, a much more significant station, and an experience for the passenger and the customer. It improves our efficiency. The faster we go, the more efficient we are as a service. And we project that we would be about $2.58 per passenger here, which is roughly a 75% fare box recovery, which is very, very good in terms of the overall transit agency, unprecedented in this county. It also produces a mode shift from autos to transit, as well as other modes such as walking and biking. And a bike lane is a big part of the staff recommendation here. In terms of what we feel the benefits to the cities are, and I guess this is in case you're not compelled by improvements for transit, is that for one, it's a $240 million investment in El Camino, and that's investment of regional as well as federal money. It's not a dollar of city money. It reduces greenhouse gases, reduces congestion, and reduces vehicle miles traveled. Most cities that are struggling with doing air quality programs and plans, and I know you're pursuing some of those things, are trying to find ways to reduce these elements because these are mandated by state law. It adds bike lanes. That's very appealing to a lot of segments of the population. And improves pedestrian facilities. There's removal of some of the pork chops, and that's a technical term, referring to a triangular piece of concrete that separates the right turn lane from the crosswalk. Increases crossings on the street. It shortens the crossings, making it easier for people who don't walk as fast to get across what is a very wide street. So where we are in the process today, El Camino is our highest ridership street in our entire system. It's 20% of the overall transit ridership every day in Santa Clara County. We adopted the strategic plan in 2009, giving VTA sort of policy direction to pursue these projects. We feel we're consistent with the Grand Boulevard Initiative. Grand Boulevard Initiative has validated that feeling and sort of saying that this is implementation of Grand Boulevard. We're in conceptual engineering. That is 10% level of design. In VTA projects, we typically go 10%, 35%, and 65%. And there's decision processes all along the way, so by no means are we going into construction anytime soon. And there's still a lot of design, a lot of planning work to go. Part of what we're doing, though, is that we're identifying what is a preliminary investment strategy. This is a requirement both by Caltrans, which is the owner of the facility, as well as the Federal Transit Administration, which is a potential funder. And they ask that the cities involved in the corridor, as well as the transit agency, take a preliminary investment strategy and adopt it in some fashion. That's why we're touring all of the cities this spring and winter. Workshops such as this one are a chance to allow you to ask us questions and us to share information. We were in Mountain View last week. We have scheduled meetings with Sunnyvale as well as San Jose, Santa Clara later. There will still be environmental review of this project. This is really just the start of a much more detailed piece of analysis and engineering. Caltrans becomes a key factor in how this project is shaped in the future. And the FTA Small Starts program is what we're pursuing in terms of funding. That is as much as $75 million towards the overall $240 million cost. So the choice before us in broad terms is two versions of the build alternative that we're going to share with you and talk about tonight in our detailed. And first I'll just say that El Camino is 120 feet wide. One exception is the Alameda in San Jose. There are lots of competing interests for use of that real estate. Autos, transit, there's parking on street in many locations. Bikes would like to use it, they use it today. Pedestrians, and then there's landscape medians in many locations. Which interests should get priority? Can all these interests be accommodated? This is really a policy discussion and decision. We have information that we can share with you. As the transit agency, we are obviously sort of trying to advocate for the best transit project, but it's an overall policy decision that really requires your input. So I'll tell you, here's the two different alternatives in terms of build. The first is we call mixed flow. Mixed flow is essentially station bulb outs, so wider sidewalks at the location of stations. In Los Altos, we were proposing a station at the Showers intersection. It's a lower capital expenditure. It's constrained by the surrounding traffic. So in other words, the vehicles, the buses that are in traffic in the future would be constrained in terms of its travel time. There's spot improvements. Those are just occurring at the stations. Outside the stations, there's no change to the street. The street is the same. It's a longer travel time in terms of the transit. The operating costs are higher because the speed is slower, and the ridership is lower also, basically based on the speed. The dedicated lane arrangement, what it is it converts the interior lanes on El Camino to transit lanes, so it converts them from general travel lanes. Instead of 3 lanes each direction, there would be 2. That provides separate lanes, 4 general purpose lanes. It limits the conflicts with other traffic in terms of transit is now separated from other traffic. And from that perspective, it improves safety in separating the modes. It provides a bike lane buffered by 2 to 3 feet of a hatched painted area. Less time at stations means a faster service. It's a higher level of service in terms of investment. Passengers tend to respond better to the higher level. And it's a complete street treatment in the sense of it would make pedestrian improvements and bike improvements and transit improvements throughout the street, throughout the corridor. They would not just be in spot locations, and it does result in higher ridership. What does a 4-lane El Camino look like? This question we get a lot when we do public outreach meetings, and luckily there's some nearby examples, Menlo Park, Redwood City, Burlingame. I think we actually heard all these cities referenced in the previous item when we were talking about Safeway. And this is the staff recommendation that we took to our Policy Advisory Board. Our Policy Advisory Board made up of members from each city, as well as the county supervisors, suggested that we tour this around to the cities, get their input before we go to the VTA board, and that's one reason why we're before you today. What we're suggesting is a 10.3-mile dedicated lane segment between Lafayette Street in Santa Clara and Showers Drive in Los Altos. That would meet one of the federal requirements, which is that 50% of the corridor has to be in dedicated lanes. This is a 17.3-mile corridor. It also is the most cost-effective in terms of all of our analysis, and we've looked at every possible variation of dedicated versus mixed-flow lanes. All in all, it equals about 36 different variations of dedicated, mixed-flow, and no-build. And this one really comes out top in terms of scoring for ridership, cost recovery, and efficiency. So with the preliminary investment strategy, just to sum up, in terms of the transit benefits, it greatly improves the BRT and the transit travel time. And again, speed is critical in terms of transit service. It attracts people. People don't want to ride transit if it's much slower. It's a 34% improvement on eastbound direction, 28% on the westbound direction. There's actually very little impact to auto travel time, and that's somewhat counterintuitive. But what happens is a lot of autos find alternative routes. Those alternative routes tend to have a lot more capacity, for example, Central Expressway. And El Camino basically stays the same in terms of its congestion level. There is a mode shift. We do see people moving from autos to transit and walking and biking in terms of our forecasts. The level of service stays about the same. 6 intersections are in level of service F without a project. With the project, it's 5 intersections. And some traffic diverts to multiple other routes. We've done an initial level analysis on that, not the detailed level that we will do as we move into environmental. And what we can really share with you in terms of what we've done is the actual regional network. None of the smaller residential streets are really in our model yet. That would come as we start to do environmental analysis. Relevant here to Los Altos would probably be the Foothill corridor, as you can see here in terms of the change. It's relatively modest. But there is a change. I mean, there's no denying that, and so we're not suggesting that there wouldn't be a change. There would, in terms of traffic and how it moves throughout this entire region.
Can you go back to that slide for just a second? Okay, so capacity is not that's what the roadway can handle. Your project is what you project to be the usage in 2035 without BRT, and then the next column is what you predict the usage to be if there's BRT?
Right.
Okay, but this does not explain how the people divert from El Camino Real to any of those other corridors.
It shows that these corridors, those corridors change in terms of, for example, I'll just take Middlefield, for example, westbound. It goes from 963 in terms of a vehicle peak hour volume up to over 1,000. So there is more. And so that's a diverted trip that would have taken El Camino before.
And we also don't have what the current usage is on this graph, right?
No, this is a projection.
I have a question on this. Can you cover Foothill and Miramonte line?
Excuse me.
My question is, you have Foothill and Miramonte increasing.
Yeah.
Can you cover that projection?
What does that mean?
What is the WO?
Without?
Oh, west of.
West of. Thank
Sorry.
you very much. All right. I was reading it without. I was like,
oh,
no,
sorry.
no.
Me too. My apologies in terms of that is confusing. As an illustration about the policy decision and the dynamics going on, and again, this project has been in planning level with, and we've been working with your staff. We meet with staff on a monthly basis for about 18 months now, and we've gotten to the point where we really are sort of requiring some policy input. Here's an illustration. Parking, which, for example, is important for the city of Santa Clara, on-street parking. Bike lanes, that's important for some cities. There is a choice there, and that's an emphasis. For some cities would prefer to emphasize one over another. It is possible to do both. Santa Clara, for example, is doing both, and then what they're doing is they're reducing the median width. I'll use Mountain View as an example. That the median width has to stay the same. And so Mountain View is struggling with, is it parking or is it bike lane? And that's sort of the, there's only so much square footage of street to go around. So now we can walk the alignment. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Fisher, the project manager.
Thank you, council members. Good to be back. People are interested in the physical changes to the corridor under each of the scenarios, so I'm going to show a few slides, the aerial photographs with the project superimposed that covers all three options, no build, mixed flow, and the portion of the dedicated lanes that falls within Los Altos. So on the far northern end of Los Altos, the project is exactly the same under any scenario. There is no change. There's no, the buses would operate in the right-hand lane. They would stop at bus stops for a local service, and no stations here. So there would be no changes to this portion of the corridor. Probably the most interesting thing that you see on the slide is the illustration of the city boundary, which is, when we got into the project, that's atypical. Normally, when you have a street that's separating the cities, the line's in the middle of the road. In this case, I guess because of historical reasons, there's Los Altos actually owns all the way up to the street line. Same thing for the next slide. I'm going to go very quickly until we get to where we actually start doing the project. So when we get up to San Antonio Road, that's where the street starts to vary. These are 2008 aerial photographs, so you don't see the current construction at the shopping center, the redeveloping shopping center. So this is the existing condition. This would be, again, the existing condition. But if we do go with the dedicated lane scenario, at this point, you would see the transition point between the 4-lane section of El Camino, just south of the shopping center, to the 6-lane section, and you would have a station. That is one half of a station, and the next slide will show you the other half. If you're familiar with the light rail station, when you're operating in the median, you have split platforms. The northbound platform, if you're waiting for the bus to go to Palo Alto, you take the crosswalk and wait on that blue area, and that is the station.
Steve, while we're actually on that last slide there, currently there's a mixed flow station right outside of Whole Foods Market here.
Correct.
And could you just help me understand the mixed flow station there? Is that going to stay the same? Okay, you'll circle back.
Yeah. Yes, it would stay the same. There would be less buses than there are now. Mm-hmm. So the operating plan is that all the buses that are the Rapids, the 522, which would be every 10 minutes, 6 per hour, would be moved to the median. They would not stop at the current station. You would just have the Line 22 locals, which we would be decreasing to just 4 to 3 an hour. So you would actually, on this scenario, you would have less buses immediately at the Whole Food, but I'll get into the mixed flow alternative in a second. Staying with the dedicated lanes, the other half of the station is on the other side of Showers Drive. And we would, the other question we get quite a bit is, where can we retain the cross streets and the free left turns? Intrinsic in this project, when you're building bus lanes, the intersections have to be signalized. So there is flexibility in the dedicated lane portion in terms of retaining all of the street and all the left turns, but it would require installing new traffic signals to allow that to happen. So getting to Councilmember Fishpaw's question. Again, and this is half a station. So if you're going to southbound towards Mountain View, all the buses would be in the right-hand lane. There would be a curb extension. We call it a bulb-out station, where the sidewalk comes out another 5 to 8 feet, and the station amenities then would be placed in that area. It would look like a light rail station currently looks. And of course, the opposite station is at the opposite corner. But with mixed flow, there's no other changes to the street other than those curb extensions that I just described. So going back to the dedicated lanes, you would have the ability to place a traffic signal at Distal Circle. There's discussion of whether you can keep Distal Circle and Distal Drive open, and Rengsdorf, and you can by installing traffic signal, and that illustrates that there is flexibility to retain that in the dedicated lanes. It's just a question if that was approved, going to the next level of engineering, what works best for the local agencies involved, because they all work for the transit project. So that concludes one more slide. That's getting us to that's a option that retains a left turn at Distal Drive in addition to just the regular traffic. So we're at the decision process that Kevin described before. We have a preliminary recommendation. We'll making a tour of the cities. We'll be returning to our own VTA Board of Directors in June with kind of a revised staff recommendation based on what we hear from the cities. And at that point, we'll be going to environmental review and the Caltrans project. So that concludes our presentation. We can open up for questions.
Any questions from council? Let's see. Mr. Packard?
Yes, I appreciate your coming here, wading through our long prior agenda item. But I want to ask, because I went through, I appreciate all that the VTA does, and you do a lot of good things, but is there a fourth option, and that is the city elects not to participate in any way?
Yeah, there's always the no-build option.
Can you say in just a couple sentences, what are there negative consequences to us other than, the lack of, we won't participate in the projected whatever?
So we still have a heavy level of bus service on El Camino. Yeah. And you would see an increased level of bus service at that one platform, the existing area at Whole Foods, that could, and traffic would naturally increase. You could see that as a negative impact. You would lose the opportunity for VTA to do a bike project. You may not want that opportunity, but that would.
Now, another question is that I sat through on the VTA advisory board 30 years ago when we were looking at low light rail. And Rod Diridon was heavily involved, and the projections were fantastic back then. And you said the projections are phenomenal. Yeah. The projections he made have been not nearly accurate. How do we know these projections are going to are any better?
Projections are projections. What I can tell you is that the land use forecasts that go into the model are done by ABAG. They're not done by VTA, so do you trust ABAG or not?
No, I agree with the land use model. I'm talking about the ridership.
The ridership model has gone through many revisions since that time. And what I can tell you is when we're in conjunction with doing the BART project, the federal government hired they're an independent consulting team to audit our model, to look at our model.
I have no confidence in the federal government when it comes to traffic, but thank you very much.
So that's the answer.
Okay. So, Mr. Fishbaugh, question?
My only question is if we have, I think the Whole Foods, the Showers Drive bus station is a heavily used bus station. It's certainly something that I think we have to be very cautious of or very aware of how we want to design that. The two options that we saw, and Ron asked potentially about the third option of no build. The two options we saw was the dedicated lanes, which would put a station in the median there, or mixed flow, which would leave the station on the side of the road but would actually bump it out. Currently today, a lot of drivers actually use the bus lane right there as a right-hand turn into Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And so that would have an impact on that, potentially the level of service at that intersection, just simply by putting the bump out there might actually have an impact because so many people that make a right-hand turn are now forced to not use a bus lane as a right-hand turn lane.
Right.
But the third option, if I understand correctly, is there the ability to leave the bus stop there as it is today, or does VTA really want to see one of the two options pursued, either the mixed flow bump out or the dedicated lanes center median?
So we've looked at the Whole Foods stop, and I agree it's not a great situation. When we get to the next level of engineering, one of the challenges under any of the circumstances is to hone in on the detail of that. We may find that, and I'm speculating here, that under the mixed flow option that you're correct. We may not, extending that sidewalk may not be great without greatly altering the access to Whole Foods, which I don't think we want to do. I don't think the project wants to take that on. So you might have a bulb out on the opposite side by the other shopping center. But it's something we need to analyze in a much more detailed engineering way.
Right.
Because we need to squeeze a number of a better bus shelter into that fixed area that's there now. And can we do that? We've done it in other places. On the Santa Clara Alum Rock project, we found that we were just constrained in a couple of places, and we were able to really squeeze the station in. So that's certainly a possibility.
Okay, and then my second question that I have, I've talked about this with a number of residents, and the first question I always get is, going down to 2 lanes, it seems like the capacity or the throughput their first question to me is the capacity dramatically reduced by eliminating one of the lanes? We see that the travel times actually are nominally impacted, and the explanation provided is the diversion to other corridors. But is the capacity itself dramatically reduced on El Camino?
It is. You're losing, I think, roughly 900. So a lane of traffic accommodates like 950, I believe, and so you're losing that.
Yeah.
It goes away. That's why you get some level of diversion. Now, not to be too idealistic, some of that diversion also goes onto the bus, which we love from VTA's perspective. But yeah, it is reduced for automobile capacity.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Cassis?
Sure. Can you go back to the Showers intersection?
Whoops. I think I passed it.
You did? Yeah, that one.
Okay.
So I would encourage, and this is just one example, to actually have a whole intersection design to look at rather than the left side, the right side.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an effective tool from a visualization standpoint, predominantly because for the point that Jarrett was raising on the bus, you've basically eliminated the southbound traffic at that intersection to one lane. Because when a bus is stopped there, there's no way to get around it. And you have only one southbound lane. Whereas today, you have 3 southbound lanes and a dedicated concrete pad for a bus, which is the right-hand turn, which is a concern when you're reducing from basically 3 operating lanes to 1.
Yeah.
So I don't see how that is a viable option, which is hard to look at in isolation on the left side without then looking at the right side. So if you can go to your next slide. So here, you continue with the 2 lanes, that's fine. The concern I have is the left-hand turn into Whole Foods. That's inadequately short. Jordan Avenue is much longer with not nearly the amount of traffic. So again, another design concern, but again, you're only looking at right side, left side. It'd be good to look at the intersections in totality. I think you can do that. If you can go back to the previous slide. I'm sure you're aware that there is currently, next to Whole Foods there on the slide, a concept of a project being proposed. And so that's going to significantly change the dynamics of that parcel. Have you incorporated that proposed development into this design?
No, we're still doing, my colleague who sits right next to me is still doing a plan review. I think he may have just submitted you comments on that. We will. I mean, at this stage of the project, the plans are very fluid. It's easy to change those. So we will certainly incorporate those if we pursue this alternative.
Okay.
Go forward.
The final thing is, I don't believe that there's a significant amount. I just did a satellite flyover using Google. There doesn't appear to be a significant impact on the street parking until you pass Mariposa, which is on the other side of El Monte.
Right.
We have a lot more shops with not as much on-site parking. So I know Mountain View has expressed some concerns, and they have wanted you to come back, and I believe in the newspaper over the last couple of days, I had seen something, I don't remember which paper. What is your timeline for circling back with them to address the Mountain View concern? And what is your timeline for coming back to us? Because I know we're receiving a report and we're providing direction.
Right.
So I'm looking for timelines because I'm in favor of improving transportation to get people out of cars. I voted for the 522. It's a great product. But today, my concern is how this is developed. It needs to understand what the unintended consequences are, and I just pointed out one with showers.
Yeah. So Mountain View took a straw poll at our work session a week ago, and I believe by 4 negative, 2 in favor, 1 abstained, they were in favor of the mixed flow alternative, and actually they asked their staff to pursue a bike lane independently of that project at that same meeting. That was comment from the council. It wasn't
a decision. Okay.
Yeah. We would like to get that formalized from Mountain View, whatever, because it's hard for us to convey to people who are proponents of the project, who are looking at the project, that there was an informal vote. So we'd like to circle back in another 2 months with Mountain View. Now, there may be some discussion on their part that we already told you what you thought while you're back here. We'd like to have your formal comments by April of this year, because we want to go back to our board of directors and have time to analyze this, saying, here's what we have. We thought we originally recommended 10 miles of dedicated lane. We may have lost some as the process went forward. We may have lost some ridership in addition to losing a dedicated lane. So the project becomes not quite as effective as we wanted it to be. Therefore, our staff recommendation is this. So we do need the cities to go on record. So just so we are able to responsibly report back to our board as to what the project is, and we're able to tell Caltrans, who's the owner of the road, Los Altos is in favor, not in favor.
So I think based on your response, there's 2 concerns I have. One, I would like to see the final iteration before we actually exercise our final vote and voice. But I'm only one of 5. The second is, my concern is with San Antonio and El Camino. There are a number of housing projects that are being considered and developed, both over in Palo Alto, Mountain View / Palo Alto, and then on the other side in Mountain View along El Camino. And that intersection is not rated very well.
Yeah.
And so if we constrict to 1 lane at Showers, that will push traffic back, which will impede the intersection at San Antonio, which is my predominant concern. So That's my feedback. I'd like to see the next iteration if possible. I think in concept it's good, but I think there's a lot of questions such as showers.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Sadoway?
Yeah, so I've seen at the VTA PAC presentations on the bus rapid transit, so I understand from a bus rider perspective the values. I would really like to better understand the impacts to the vehicles on El Camino as well as the diversion of vehicles off El Camino. So, for example, you spoke of where the proposal is to eliminate lane capacity of 950 cars. 950 people can't ride the bus rapid transit. I don't know what number we expect to ride the bus rapid transit, 50? I don't know what the number is. So we're taking capacity, replacing it with something that has far less capacity. So even if every single one of those car drivers wanted to convert, they can't. And my concern is you've shown that these cars can be accommodated on other corridors like Central and Foothill, but what you haven't shown is how they, divert from El Camino to those. Right now, San Antonio and Foothill Expressway intersection is gridlock in the PM hours. Grant Road is bumper to bumper in the PM hours. El Monte, constant complaints from our residents about vehicle safety on that road. All of those are corridors through our cities, many of which have single-family residential homes with driveways directly onto those corridors. So to really understand whether this is in the best interest of the city of Los Altos, I would need a lot more information as to how we expect drivers that we fully expect to divert from El Camino because it's at capacity, you're eliminating capacity, they won't stay on El Camino, they'll go somewhere else, where they're going to go. Because I don't think it's in, the best interests of the region to push more and more cars driving through single-family residential neighborhoods, and that's my concern. And we don't have the information before us to know whether that's a valid concern or irrelevant. The other thing that I've seen in other travel projects where there's been a change in capacity, sure, I can, instead of driving El Camino, I can now drive Central Expressway, and my travel time on El Camino hasn't, changed because I'm no longer there, but my travel time has still increased because getting to Central Expressway and getting back to my destination takes me way out of my way because El Camino was the most direct travel route. So I'm actually adding vehicle miles traveled to divert to these other roads that have capacity. And I would like to understand how that works because I've seen it from, capacity was eliminated on Rastradero and Palo Alto, and you can follow the commentary there. Oh, well, people can just go over to Page Mill, and that's where everyone should be anyways. Well, Page Mill has capacity issues, but a lot of people are on Rastradero because they don't want to be on Page Mill. They want to be farther south. So, I think there's dynamics around this model that are not being understood right now. The model has focused on the benefits to the bus riders. I think those are well understood. Now we need to understand the benefits to the people who can't ride the bus, who won't be able to ride the bus because there's not sufficient capacity to accommodate all the current users of El Camino and even projected users.
Good points.
We do have one public speaker, but let me just put my 2 cents in, and then I'll call the very patient Gary Hedden to the podium. First, we did receive a number of positive emails supporting this. Not all. There was at least one that was negative, but we did get quite a few of those. So I just want to note that for the record. I'd also like to note that Whole Foods is in our top 25 sales tax revenue generators for the city of Los Altos. So I don't think that we really want to do anything to cause that sales tax revenue to decline.
As is the vitamin shop.
As is the vitamin shop, too, which is right there also. That's right, on that property that will be redeveloped. And I share Mr. Cassis's concern about the redevelopment of the San Antonio Shopping Center. There are 350 apartments going in there, and my understanding is there's another proposal for an additional 200 apartments there or more. I think that definitely needs to be considered in this design. So those are my comments, and if there's nothing else from council, I will call Gary Hedden to the podium. Thank you for your presentations. And do we have anyone else who would wish to speak on this item? No. So please, 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm still here. Gary Hedden, resident of Los Altos. As you know, I support bike riding. I commuted by bike for 12 years to work, so I've done it. But I don't ride a bike on El Camino. It's way too dangerous. And so I'm looking at this, and I can see this is really complicated, trying to get, like we always know, the devil's in the details. And so it is an issue. But one thing that strikes me is one option was to keep the parking and eliminate the bike lane. And so I really don't like that. And here, the parking can go somewhere else. The bike lane, if it's not there, it's never going to be there. It can't be anywhere else. It has to be there. And so we're talking about getting people out of cars into buses, and I'm hoping some people might actually get on a bike and use these bike lanes if they exist and they're safe, because that is one of the big impediments to riding a bike, safety. And I talk to people all the time, and they say, well, I've got a friend who he rides his bike to the Y to work out. Well, he doesn't feel comfortable riding a bike. And this is crazy. So I'm used to it, but I still don't ride on El Camino. So there was a presentation last week at the 359 State, the pop-up on Bikes Make Life Better. And the two presenters are consultants. They work with a number of companies, Google and Facebook. And they mentioned Facebook is putting in, they're in Menlo Park. They have about 3,000 employees now. They're going to double by the end of the year to 6,000 employees. It's a real challenge for Facebook to get these people to work, and how they're going to get around work. They're going to have little, not zip cars, but zip bikes on the campus site. And they want to encourage people. They have to encourage people to carpool, ride their bikes, use public transit. This is where we have to go, because I don't know how accurate these projections are either, but they're pretty scary too. Not as scary as riding on El Camino, though. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. That's our only public speaker. Any further council comments? Mr. Cassis?
I don't know if we need all of you at the next meeting to present. I would encourage that final iteration to come back this way in a timely way and timely basis to allow us to comment on it, if at all possible. We do have one rep now for Palo Alto, Los Altos Hills, and Mountain View, and that's Margaret Abikoga. And so she can help carry our voice, and I know that Megan and the others have worked with Margaret on a number of things. So I would encourage you to come back probably at a minimum at our second meeting in March, if at all possible, even if it's not the final design that you're presenting to Mountain View, at least to understand what does that look like. I would like to get as close to the final proposal as possible so the board has our voice and Margaret can carry that voice for us on the board. And it's ironic that Megan mentions Arrestadero, because I actually now don't travel the entire road. I cut into the neighborhood. It's much faster going down Maybell than it is Arrestadero. That is an unintended consequence that I'm sure other individuals that transport themselves that direction have learned. So traffic like water will find the easiest route.
All right. Any other comments, Mr. Packard?
Yes. I may be too tired to be careful and political, but my preference would be to stop all support and recommend that they don't spend any more money. It may be $240 million, but that's our money. That's the taxpayers' money. I just think it's a waste. I think that there's so many unintended consequences, so many uncertainties. We're going to spend that money, and it's going to end up probably with a result that's worse off than what we've got now. So that's just how I feel about it. Yeah.
Do we need to take any action tonight, or do you have what you need from us? Any further comments? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move to our last agenda item, which is item number 12, community survey on downtown. Thank you again. So I'll introduce the item as a staff report. What As directed by council, a subcommittee of Ms. Satterley and myself worked with the city manager and with Godby Research to develop draft number 4 of the proposed questionnaire, which is before you tonight. My recommendation is that council direct the subcommittee to work with staff and Godby Research to consider all the input from council that we'll get tonight and the public that has already come in, and return to council with a final questionnaire for approval. So I'm hoping that's the action you will take. I would like to identify Charles Hester, who is here from Godby Research and has been here since about 9. So thank you for being here. If you'd like to speak, let me know. I will also provide you some time after the public comments, which we have a couple, to respond to anything raised. So would you like to speak now? Okay, so I think maybe after the public comments. So are there any questions from council for myself or Ms. Satterley or for Charles Hester? Seeing none. So I will call the public speakers. We have 2 people. First is Gabrielle Tiemann, and second and last is Susan Russell. And if you could, you'll each get 3 minutes. You could come to the podium and address the council. Thank you.
Good evening, Gabriela Tiemann. I'm a resident of downtown Los Altos, and I would like to request that you postpone this particular survey. And here's one of the reasons I think we should wait till some of the developments that have been happening in downtown are finished, like the building on 3rd Street and the Lennar project on 1st Street. Not only that, but I walk downtown all the time, and I love being able to have my friends now go on the same sidewalk with me along 1st Street. And not only that, there is a new vitality downtown. We have buildings that have been painted most interesting colors. I happen to like those. I think they just add that little je ne sais quoi. And not only that, but we have people that are coming downtown to attend functions given by some interested community groups, civic groups. And I think that we should give downtown a little time to come to life so people can sample what it looks like and then maybe have the survey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And our last speaker, Susan Russell.
I'm sorry.
Oh, do you have a question?
I do have a question for you.
Sorry. Ms. Tiemann, could you come back up to the podium? And Ms. Satterley?
Sorry, late on the light there. So postpone till when?
Well, postpone till the building on 3rd and the Lennar project on 1st is finished.
Okay, so as soon as they're done, then that would be okay, because once they're done, of course, then Safeway might be under construction, and maybe 101st Street might go under construction, and there may be, another application on Main Street. I mean, for better or worse, there's a lot of construction going on downtown.
Oh, tell me, they've been building houses right across from me for a year now. I cannot disagree with what you're saying. However, I would like to see people come down and sample and see what it's like to see a building on 3rd Street that is the height it is, or see a wonderful condominium project on 1st Street, see the possibilities. And not only that, but maybe they're a little bit more tolerant when all that construction will be going on.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Then Ms. Russell, our last speaker.
Sue Russell, 744 Los Altos Avenue. Actually, I agree with what Gabriela said. I want to reiterate the comments that I made earlier regarding the survey. I'm speaking as an individual who attended more than a year's worth of the Downtown Development Committee meetings and became persuaded of the necessity of revitalizing downtown. I think this survey will not produce the desired results because there's not adequate background being given to the people who are being asked the questions. This could be done via the town crier along with more information being provided by the surveyor, but there needs to be much more community education, I think, to get valid results. And even then, I doubt you will be able to get the answers you really need for making such complicated planning decisions. The survey is also premature in light of the ongoing developments in downtown. On specific questions in the survey, first, the parking issue, asking people whether they would pay for parking will almost undoubtedly get mostly no answers, I think. Those who think there is adequate parking now won't want to pay, and those who don't think it's adequate will want more parking spaces but won't want to pay either. Yet my husband answered yes when I showed the survey to him, as we pay for parking in San Jose and San Francisco when we want to do something there, so he thinks it would be eminently reasonable. But I just think the answers are going to be so mixed is my problem. In order to answer the questions about parking reasonably, information about the present parking situation needs to be provided. It was abundantly clear to me at the Planning Commission meeting last week that most people think we have a parking management problem, not a lack of sufficient parking spaces. Another question, number 18, whether a structure should be above or below ground. I think the answer will probably be one's gut level response to whether you like to go underground or you don't, and also related to the cost. Nowhere is it factored in that if the structure is below ground, which was discussed with the parking plaza development, this land can still be built upon. Second, on the question number 19, the way the opinion F is phrased right now, I think casts that response negatively by using the word damage. Again, there should be information provided about the current sales tax income, the vacancy rate, the numbers of feet on the street that retailers think they need to be successful versus what Los Altos has now. The Downtown Development Committee and Ann Stetler reviewed much information, visited other downtowns before recommending that the city develop the parking plazas. Some of this data, I think, is important for making an informed decision. Question number 20, it implies that 3 stories are not allowed. It's my understanding that there is a height limit, not a limit on the stories. That is why 40 Main actually could go to 3 stories. Question number 22, I think that most people have no idea how much the city spent on the downtown improvements, and so they're going to probably be just either thinking whether they like it or whether they think it was terrible that it took so long to do it. I could go on with specific examples, but my main concern is the need for better preparation if the survey is to proceed. The survey is premature as well as being flawed, I think.
Could I ask you a question? Maybe there's others, looks like. Would you be willing to provide your comments in an email or some document to us? You had a lot of detailed comments. I'd like to make sure that we capture them all, so appreciate that. You can send it to either to the city clerk or to Ms. Satterley and myself.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. You had a question?
No, I didn't have a question.
Okay, thank you. So those are our speakers. So did you like, Mr. Hester, would you like to make any comments? Okay, if you could come to the podium, that'd be great.
Are you going to announce you're moving your Peninsula office from San Mateo to Los Altos?
It was hard enough moving from Half Moon Beta to San Mateo. I'm Charles Hester. I'm a vice president with Godby Research. Mayor Carpenter, my pro tem of Fishpaw, Councilmember Packard, Councilmember Cassis, Councilmember Satterley, staff, administration, members of the public, thank you very much for having me. Going over this, I would just, before we jump into the meat of the survey, a lot of times when I present at meetings, there's sort of questions in terms of how we got here, in terms of a methodology, and how we got here in terms of what sort of sampling frame we're using. So I thought I might talk about those for a couple of minutes, which may address some of the comments that came in via email, as perhaps maybe some comments or questions that the council might have, as well as members of the public. Our firm is a public opinion research firm. We do public policy research for mostly local governments and regional governments. I remember most of you from the Park and Rec Master Plan process, as well as the voter survey that we did a little bit before that. Certainly done public policy issues on everything from affordable housing with the city of Mountain View to off-leash dog parks with the city of Cupertino to resident satisfaction with Campbell, Cupertino, Sunnyvale, and the like. We also work for agencies that serve the city of Los Altos, Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, Foothill De Anza Community College District, and it was quite ironic that VTA was here before us, since we worked on both the 522 strategic planning research as well as the bike project that is now a region-wide pilot program for the MTC is doing for bike share and that. So we do a lot of public policy research. In terms of the survey and the methodology, I think the overarching concern in the meetings that we had with the city that this survey be primarily statistically valid and demographically projectable to the larger population of the town of Los Altos, whether that is the resident population or the voter population, which sort of takes us in a quantitative direction with the survey, which takes us to a telephone survey, an internet survey, or an email survey. And getting into that, we start looking at the sampling frame and what would be the best sample for this particular project. And among that, we decided that to use a voter sample with a hybrid random digit dial sample. So what we're trying to do with that is cover the voters. We know these people live in Los Altos because the voter file appends an address to the phone number and an actual name, or the RDD sample is more of a randomizing of the residential exchanges that serve Los Altos, but they also serve other communities, whether they're cities that neighbor Los Altos or unincorporated portions of Santa Clara County. Within the random digit dial frame, we will get residents that have both listed and unlisted numbers, but one of the flaws of this random digit dial methodology, aside from the geographical issue, is cell phones. And it's something that we get asked about all the time. How do we incorporate people with cell phones? And, yes, sir. Sure. Okay. The voter file includes both listed and unlisted numbers, as well as cell phones and cable modems. Given the research objectives for this, was the most appropriate methodology and sampling design that we came up with Councilmember Satterley and Mayor Carpenter. Sure.
I'm really pleased with what Megan, you and Val have done and you've done. I think it's a good initial draft. I'm pleased with it. I have just a couple comments.
Okay. So any other questions for Mr. Hester? Otherwise, thank you for your...
Thank you. Sure. A couple comments is on page 3, the sub-question B2 is, are you a member of your household elected or appointed any city, county, or whatever? Maybe that's important, but in a way, I would prefer knowing, do they or any member of their household work downtown or have an interest in a business downtown or property downtown? And if there's a limited time to spend on the phone, in a way, I'd rather have that information than, because there's so few that are elected, and then they say they're disqualified. If we keep that in, you are not eligible to compete. That's a little rough. I think that could be said a little more graciously if we keep that.
So can I ask you a clarifying question
Sure.
on that? So are you suggesting that we also screen out, that question is designed to screen out people who are very involved with the city as electeds or as commissioners? Do you also propose to screen out people who own property or businesses downtown?
Not necessarily. And I'm not sure.
I just want to know.
Yeah, I'd like to know. I'm not even sure that we need to screen out elected people.
Okay, you just want to capture the information but not eliminate them from
maybe
the
not.
survey.
I'd rather know,
Okay. Okay, I hear that.
The next one is page 11, number 23. This was a waste of taxpayer money. Taxpayer money is a little bit of a little too loaded. And it might be just city funds, a little softer. And likewise, number 24 is, do you favor or oppose additional infrastructure and cosmetic improvements? Cosmetic sounds, oh boy, I don't want to waste money on cosmetic improvement. So I'd eliminate the word cosmetic. The only other thing I was thinking of is maybe some questions that talk about trade-offs. If you could have the library upgraded versus something, would you rather see a park downtown where downtown itself a park, or would you rather see a parking garage? Would you rather see this or that? If there was at all possible, do you think we should spend money on? A key question of mine is: should we be spending? Do the public want us to spend money on downtown? And if we have the opportunity to spend $3 million and put in 100 parking spaces, do they want us to do that, or would they rather us spend that on something else? And I don't know the answer. I'm not sure this addresses that yet.
That's your comments?
But I really like what you're doing, the direction.
Thank you. So did Mr. Fishbaugh?
Yeah, I had some comments. One of my questions was with question number 19. I sent comments in that address this, but my question here was I want to address the potential one-story buildings that have constraints such as floor area ratio and parking requirements that have no ability to go to 2 stories right now. I think it would be helpful if we could understand not only if residents, how they feel about 3 to 7 stories, but also how they feel about making it possible for some of the one-story buildings to be developed into 2-story.
I'm not quite sure. So a number of members of the public have spoken to the fact that we don't provide enough information in this survey to make what I will call an informed decision. And I would fully agree with this. I would go so far as to say this is what I would call an uneducated survey. But I think that's the intent, right? And if that's not what you think the intent is, we should, revisit this. But the intent is to really take a pulse. What is your gut level reaction to the concept of building more parking? Needed, not needed, don't care. What is your gut level reaction to, you think there's more parking? You're the only person who's going to answer the question. Would you rather have it above ground or would you rather have it below ground? So it's to take a pulse, because we have residents, business owners, property owners who come in and state the silent majority wants X. We think people want Y. We think another group would want Z if you would go sell it to them. So when you start talking about very nuanced, specific type questions like, should city change policy so that existing one-story buildings would be able to build to 2-story buildings, and this might entail us having to do X, Y, and Z. I just think that's way too complicated for this
I agree
this
that
survey.
It could be worded in a very complicated way.
So, but what information are you trying to get? Because the public doesn't understand that they might not go to 2 stories because there's insufficient parking or there's insufficient building space. So what information are you looking for?
I'm looking for, if it's possible to ask a question in a way that states that if they're not comfortable with 3 to 7 stories, are they comfortable with more buildings being at 2 stories? Maybe as simple as would you be...
Okay, well, that we could ask. Would you
I don't want to get into the
we could ask that question, but so we had this conversation multiple times around height.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask the average Los Alton resident, how tall are the buildings on Main or State, or how many stories are the buildings on Main or State, my prediction is most people don't know. Couldn't guess. So if you said to them, what do you think about changing the 1-story buildings on Main to 2 stories? I'm not sure they have any context with which to answer that question, because in their mind they might think they already are 2 stories, because there are 2-story buildings. So then they wonder, what are you really asking me? So I'm not saying we can't ask that question, but if people can't have a context to answer, then what are you really getting? So I just think about, in your own experience, whether you think the average person would be able to differentiate and answer that question as to, would you like to see more of the 1-story buildings on Main and State become 2-story? But I think you can ask it.
I think it would be possible. I just feel that it's the one height that isn't really addressed here. It's just assumed that everything could be 2 stories, when in fact, through many technical and policy discussions, we could make it more possible for 2-story buildings to be developed in the corridor. My other question that that you can help me answer, I think we had a quick discussion about an online survey when we initially brought this up, and the understanding that an online survey could be, it's not statistically relevant because it can be influenced through email bombardment, tell everybody to go visit this site. You could visit the site through a proxy, and a single individual could answer the survey 1,000 times with their own answers, and it would be biased completely. There are many reasons that an online survey would be biased, but if there are people in town that are very interested in, we've discussed this a number of times. If the town crier, there was an individual that wrote into the town crier encouraging people to answer the survey if they get called. in the letters to the editor. If there are people in the community that want to provide their opinion and we're reaching out to a specific group, is there a way that we can still collect feedback from people similar to our senior survey that the town crier could advertise to the public at large, and we could just capture that feedback at the same time?
So I think that would be council discretion. The direction we got last time was statistically relevant, and that was the contract that we awarded. Right. So A, we'd have to change the contract, but B, we can't control statistically relevant. So now you've got an online survey that, what do you do with the data? Because it could be influenced. And again, one of the premises behind this survey was we're trying to get to the people who aren't the people who are clamoring to answer the survey necessarily, the quote-unquote silent in the majority, the people we don't hear from. I really think that that's a significant reason to go out with this survey, because the people we hear from who may want to answer the survey, we hear from them, so we already have, the answers from them. That's not to say if they get called they shouldn't participate. I mean, please do participate, but if council wants to go in a different direction, we can, but I thought that message was very strong at the original meeting that we wanted statistically relevant.
Okay.
So no more comments? And Mr. Cassis, your comments?
So, what do we have? We have an opportunity to coalesce a broad voice versus listening to advocates who state that they represent the majority. And while I understand and appreciate an online survey, all we have to do is look at the town crier online questions and how you can stack the results. It's very easy to accomplish. And then that goes back to the advocates conveying, well, see, the public has now spoken. I think we need to hear from the public directly, which is the intent of this survey, which is why we chartered Megan and Val to work together. So, questionnaire, good work. Timing, sooner rather than later. I don't want to defer. February, fine. As soon as the city projects are completed, off you go. You're into the races. The next thing is changes. Feel free to incorporate the thoughts that you've heard conveyed here. I think that the two of you can discern and distill what you've heard, including Ron's and Jared's and mine. But in the end, I think we have a good product. We have good timing. People will always dispute the outcome if they disagree with it. They will dispute the timing if they disagree with it. They will dispute whatever factor that will lead credence to the concerns that they are advocating for. This may very well justify the very points that the advocates have been advocating for. Let us hear from the public. Let us not defer hearing their voice.
Could I make one last comment? I think the intent is, I know the timing, saying this is premature. The goal was, let's do it now, and we'll do it probably in a year or two again. And we want to get a pulse of the community as projects. I've been a big advocate that I think that when people see some of these projects, they're going to say, oh my goodness, I had no idea. And they're going to say that either that they like it or they dislike it. But I'm in favor of doing maybe multiple. And this is the first one.
And the thought that was that we would, the First Street work, the current city infrastructure construction work is essentially done. It's to be done by the end of the month, and it looks pretty done to me today when I was down there. So the thought would be to field it as soon as practicable after it's really done. The question that will turn partly on if y'all want us to bring the final questionnaire back to you or just move forward with it, trusting the subcommittee to deal with it. So,
my last quick comment is Ron's comment reminded me, if we are going to do this in the future, I think there are many questions in here that can be asked in a follow-up survey. I'd love your input as to the subcommittee on how we can best develop this survey to have specific questions that we're anticipating asking in the future added into it, to retain many of the questions so that we have, data points moving over time of the exact same question being asked, potentially.
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you did decide to track this survey, there are many questions in here that we could track, as well as, depending on the space, there are potential new questions based on whatever comes out of the survey. That is possible.
Thank you.
I'd like to just make a quick second point, respected to Councilmember Fishpaw's earlier comment. You own this survey, so at the end of the process, if you want to give it to the town crier and have them put it on their website or program it in SurveyMonkey and do it on the city's website. It is your document. You're free to do with it whatever you want. However, we would recommend that would be after the survey is done, because we certainly don't want people waiting for the online survey and then not taking the telephone survey, with the caveat that the telephone survey will be statistically valid and demographically projectable. Excuse me.
Good. Any other comments? So I'd like to get an understanding, either a motion or something with regard to move forward.
I'll move that you continue forward, taking into account some of the ideas as you deem appropriate.
And then
bring it back.
You would like the questionnaire brought
I'm not
back?
even sure I need it to be. I really don't. Just do it.
Okay,
that's my motion.
The motion. Is there a second? So it's been moved and seconded that we continue forward with the subcommittee working with staff and Godby Research. Any further council discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And thank you very much for your patience, Mr. Hester. Now we come to the staff and council reports and direction on future agenda items. Does council have any reports? Ms. Satterley?
Yes, so I attended the California League City Employee Relations Policy meeting, where we got an update on Governor Brown's pension plan, all 12 points. And I had a question for council as to whether they would like to have that information reviewed 10 minutes at a future council meeting or not. I didn't know what the level of interest was.
Is it written material?
There is a document that sort of lists the points.
I'd like to read it.
Okay.
Could it be on consent, like the minute I brought forward 2 press releases?
I could just email. I'd have to get a soft copy. I can get hard copies to your inboxes.
Okay.
If that, I just wasn't sure what your level of interest was. So
I have a high level, but I prefer just reading it than
that's fine. The other thing I'll let you know out of that is there is ongoing special conference, I think is what they're called, a conference committee, to move this plan forward. And the distinction between a conference committee and everything else is what comes out of the conference committee goes directly to the legislature, the Senate, and the House, and gets voted on. It doesn't go through any of the standard committees. It can't be amended. It's sort of once it comes out of conference, it's a straight up or down motion. And so because of that, depending on our level of interest as to what is in this plan, we as a city might want to try and provide some written input or something into this conference committee because many of the points in the governor's plan will impact our options in the future. So again, I wasn't sure whether that was something you're interested. Perhaps what I can do is get you the hard copy in your inboxes. You can read it, and then based on that, if you think you want to have a discussion about the city providing some input to that conference committee, then we can agendize it in the future.
Feel free to send me a soft copy.
I don't know that I have it in soft copy.
Other council reports, Mr. Cassis?
A couple of things to announce coming down the pipe. There's a 3:30 memorial tree planting for Phyllis Semple this Thursday. If you're able to attend, park in the 3:30 Thursday. Park at the Garden House rather than over in Redwood Grove.
Yeah, it's in Patriot Corner near Garden House of Shell Park. I will be there too.
All right. The next thing is this coming Monday. Patch is celebrating its 1-year anniversary at 395 State Street. 5:30 to 7 o'clock. They're going to have announcements at 6:15. Doug, are we still having the 7 p.m. Homestead Road project meeting in Grant Park? That'll be Tuesday, January 31st, if anybody's interested in that. And then the next thing is Lehigh. As you saw from the agenda item earlier today, we have the Lehigh Plant Forum at Los Altos Hills Town Hall. It will be noticed. I would encourage, if anybody's interested, to attend that. It's on February 6th. And then finally, I am stepping off of the Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability Authority, Joint Powers Authority. If you are interested, I don't know if Val's going to make an announcement, but please see Val for interest. I sent her and the other 2 mayors documents identifying the role, the responsibilities, and the meeting dates.
Will we get an update from the February 6th meeting and a recommendation as to whether we should follow the recommendation in the by the consultant that we should be monitoring or doing something to make sure that these mitigations happen? Is that going to, are you guys going to be making a recommendation to us on that.
Right. Without going to detail, it is anticipated that an outcome of that will be a council discussion.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. Mr. Packard, any reports? Nothing. And Mr. Fishbaugh?
February 2nd at 9 a.m. in room 9 at Hillview, I believe, is the 60th Anniversary Planning Committee's next public meeting. And if you are looking for something exciting to get involved in the city of Los Altos, this is the committee for you. Pretty good sell. The 25th at 4:30 p.m., I will be attending the CHAC Board of Directors meeting, and it'll be my first meeting with CHAC, so I'm excited for that. And then I believe that on the 31st at 7 p.m., there is a Homestead Road public meeting at Grant Park that I will be unable to attend along with the rest of council, I believe, but just to put it out there.
Okay, great. I have a few reports. The Community Center mailer is printed. You have it on the dais, and the website is live. And there are lots of these if you would like more. Secondly, January 20th was officially Judge Leonard Edwards Day in the city of Los Altos, and I was able to present him a proclamation declaring that, or honoring him, at the Los Altos Town Crier 2011 Los Alton of the Year dinner, where he was the Los Alton of the Year. I have a bunch of meetings coming up. This Thursday is the Santa Clara Valley Water Commission meeting. That's the 25th, and that's Wednesday, sorry. On Thursday, there is the Santa Clara County Library District Board meeting. I don't know why all these meetings get scheduled the same week, but they do. There is, I am having a quarterly meeting with the commission and committee chairs. That first meeting will be February 13th. There is, let's see, you talked about the Phyllis Semple Memorial. I will be there. And there is also a Cities Association Board meeting on February 9th. So that's my report. And staff, any reports? Mr. Maginot? Mr. Nunna, staff reports? Good. So in celebration of our 60th year anniversary, I adjourn this meeting.
I wish we would have had